Call the July 21st Apopka City Council meeting to order. Commissioner Smith will give us the prayer pledge and fact of the day.
Okay. Let's assume the attitude of prayer. Most gracious Lord, my Father, we come now once again before your presence in the humblest manner that we know how as servants. Our Father, we come now asking your guidance and your leadership as we partake of the business of this city, that we move self out of the way, we do things that's in the best interest of all parties involved. We thank you for your blessing you've already bestowed upon us. We pray in thy Son Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Fact of the day.
Well,
On July 21st, 2011, NASA's Space Shuttle program completes its final and 135th mission when the shuttle Atlantis lands at Kennedy Space Center in Florida. During the program's 30-year history, its 5 orbiters, Columbia, Challenger, Discoverer, Atlantis, and Endeavour, carried more than 350 people into space and flew more than 500 million miles, and shuttle crews conducted important research, serviced the Hubble Space Telescope, and helped in the construction of the International Space Station, among other activities. NASA retired the shuttle to focus on a deep space exploration program. Back to the day.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Edward, do you know, are the lights intentionally off, or are they not working? It's kind of dark in here.
No, they should be on. Let me see if they can check them right there. They're on one of those.
Sorry.
Sure. There they are.
Cool. Thanks.
Okay, approval of the minutes.
I have one change with
Sure.
the minutes. We had a dedicated online tuning into our July 7th meeting, and when they saw the review of the minutes, they felt that they were not clear, it didn't clearly have all the information or the public comments, and I already spoke to Susan about that, and she is going to correct that.
Okay, well, we need to kind of know what, so everybody agrees to, we need to know what that, you got that, Commissioner Velasquez?
I do, and that
Okay,
had to do
perfect.
with the public comment
Okay,
by Mr. Edmund Poria, that the minutes that we had do not reflect what he had spoken.
right, I
on
know,
that day.
but you need to, before you put it into the record, you need to tell us what you're putting in the record so we can agree to that.
Oh, do I have to read this whole thing?
But do you want to put it all in there, then yes.
No, I can just, I have it typed, and she had already kind of
Well,
gone back.
I know, but you're asking us to approve something we
Oh.
haven't seen, so we need to be able to, you want to just, how do you want to handle it? You want to just put these minutes off, we can put them off till next commission meeting, or you can read them all, either way.
Well, I don't want to, no, we've been here, I'd rather put them off to the next meeting.
Okay, you want to just? put
Yes.
off the minute? Okay,
Right.
that's fine.
Summarize and tell us. what-
Right.
Yeah, that's fine, okay.
It's
Nope,
easier
Nope,
that
no
way.
problem. So we'll just,
Do
we
we
want to
need to make a
approve the
motion along
minutes.
those lines
just-
to wait?
We'll just postpone until next commission meeting.
Okay, so we'll
Yeah,
postpone,
no,
and she'll
no,
correct the
Yeah,
minutes
Nope, no problem.
to include,
Okay,
okay?
thanks, Commissioner.
Thank you.
Edward, any changes to the agenda?
No changes to the agenda, Mayor.
Okay,
Thank you, Susan.
all right. Susan, do we have anybody from the public who wishes to speak on general matters? Okay, Gary, come on forward.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for a few moments to speak before you today. My name is Gary McSweeney, and I'm the president of the Rock Springs Ridge Homeowners Association. Just to give you an update, we had a meeting today with the golf group developer, owner of the golf course lands, and the HOA and that group put together a declaration of intent. It's a 7-point document, if you call it that. It was on a whiteboard, photographed and sent forward, that outlines our understanding of what our agreement is. It has been forwarded to the mayor, where it will be articulated in a more formal way, but this will give you a starting point to work with. And based upon your city review, your combined review with the commissioners, however you will move this forward, we will react to that, and when in a short period of time, put together the documents, the written documents. Kurt Ardeman will be doing that, our attorney. And we had talked on the phone, Mayor, that to give you confidence in the majority of people in Rock Springs Ridge who are for this agreement, we're prepared to rent out the amphitheater, and in one evening, have you speak, have Kurt there, answer any questions, and have tables to sign up, so everything will be
Sure.
a hub of activity, if you're
Absolutely.
willing
You
to
won't
do
need to
that.
rent it. We'll, during the week, we're fine. We'll-
That way, in your words, you can
Yeah.
say what you want to say, and
Yeah.
Kurt can represent our
Yeah.
interests if there's anything that needs to be said beyond that. But I think seeing it in real time would be an excellent way to handle
Absolutely.
that.
Just make sure we get Susan on board so we can go ahead and get this published, so it will be a sunshine meeting, so all the commissioners can come and
Okay.
and weigh in as well. So, yeah, be
Alrighty.
happy, sooner the better. So you tell me when.
I think the residents will be very favorable to this agreement. If there's any changes, it is what it is. We're all here to work together. And I have to say that this has been a long time issue with Rock Springs Ridge and with the city, and even with the developer. So the fact that we can come together as a three-way partnership here to make this work is pretty outstanding, I think.
Yeah.
And much of it, if not all of it, has to do with the mayor in that he afforded us the opportunity to voice ourselves, to voice even opposition to what is being proposed or what is being thought of within these walls in an effort to try to get to the bottom of almost, not every aspect, but every major aspect of this so that we are comfortable and the golf group is comfortable and you guys are comfortable. And although that's a hard thing to do, but nonetheless, in hindsight, if we're 95, 98% there, it has been a real tribute to Apopka and to the leadership that you folks provide that allows that to happen. Not every place would let that happen. It could be shut down early, it could be dismissed, it could be reversed, all of that. But this was a very good example of how to handle difficulty and bring it back to a corrective state. And as I said before, this board did not cause any of this to happen. You are the inheritors of it, and it's fallen into your lap. This is news to you, Mayor, right? That, and then just to step forward to address it is remarkable. So I do appreciate that. You do have, this will be coming in a more formal way. If anybody has any personal or questions, feel free
Yeah.
to call me. You can feel free to call Kurt Ardeman, Mayor. You have his number, and you can share that.
Yes.
Any questions, we'll be glad to answer.
Perfect.
Okay?
Thank you.
Can I ask
Sure,
you
go
one
ahead.
question? Can I ask you one question? Were all the residents sent at least a letter asking them if they were interested in it?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
Well, the HOA board, I know that had been asked for the HOA to send to all the residents in Rock Springs Ridge a small questionnaire, are they interested in the purchase? And I know that was done through the HOA meetings, and I think that's been asked a few times. And I know what you're saying, but behind the scenes, I get contacted. I'm sure Commissioner Smith and Commissioner Becker, I don't know if Commissioner Bankson,
I don't get as much.
of residents who are not on board. And so I'm assuring them that at some point, the HOA is going to send this letter to each individual household to ask them if they are interested in purchasing what is the defunct golf course.
We will be doing that over the next 2 weeks. We are hopeful to have our meeting at the amphitheater 2 weeks from yesterday, in 2 weeks. We will be putting out information of our collective thoughts on what we are doing. Tell them exactly, we hope to get the rates tomorrow or the next day from your bond agency. We just put the package together today, so we are in more of a fixed mode that we can talk about it, where before it has been somewhat in transition. So we will do that. We will make everybody aware of what this agreement is and how it will affect them and get specific rates, et cetera, for.
I know what you're saying, but I'm asking, before you present that to the households, will you ask them if they're interested? Because what you're saying is you're going to send them this package as we're moving forward, we're purchasing it, this is what it's going to involve financially for each house. But I'm asking because I know from previous HOA meetings and previous meetings that my husband attends that I can't attend, it's been asked, was a letter sent to each resident, forget about telling them what's it going to cost, are they interested in purchasing?
We can certainly do that.
Okay,
Sure, as part of this process, absolutely.
okay. That's important because I know that you don't hear it, but I do. And so, you're presenting that you have the majority who are interested, but I'm hearing from a lot of residents they're not. So before we move forward here, I like to have that, at least have a consensus. And I think that's fair.
No,
I'm
not
asking you as
questioning at all.
the HOA president. I understand what our process is here. I'm asking you as the HOA president to at least come back with that, and then it gives us the security to either move forward or to say, yes, we're on board, or no, we're on board. Because at the end of the day, that's who we represent. We represent the people of Apopka. I'm not representing the golf group. I am representing the residents of Rock Springs Ridge.
Right.
And I live in Rock Springs Ridge. And so when I answer them, this is what I say. I am here to represent you. And if the majority says yes, then when I sit on the board, when I take my hat off and become the commissioner, I can sit here with the confidence to vote on something to move ahead. But if I get the majority of our residents that say no, then I have to still come up here and I am representing them. So that's all I'm asking. That's one simple step before we move forward.
I'm not arguing at all about that. I think that certainly is
That's all.
good to do. Our intention was to have a vote by all the residents of Rock Springs Ridge in 2 weeks that shows their affirmation for this proposal before you would even, I would assume, vote on it or approve it. I mean, we could put something out in the mail in advance of that. That's
Yes.
certainly not a problem.
I would appreciate
Okay.
that, just a simple yes or no, because once you get the majority that either says yes, then you can come back and present them. This is what your financial investment is going to be because we are moving forward.
Mm-hmm.
But if you send that first to them, I don't think they'll feel they have a choice. And so what's probably going to happen is they won't respond to it.
Okay.
I think if you follow by just yes or no, that's a simple, yes, you're interested in purchasing, no, I'm not interested in purchasing.
That's
So
a good
then you
point.
have an idea, and it really saves you the time and energy, and it really gives us, a heads up. Are we moving forward with it? Because this is not about the golf group.
I
And
understand.
this is about the livelihood of Rock Springs Ridge. And I would appreciate that.
What I would,
Be
what I
glad
would
to comply.
suggest, Gary, why don't you put the list of the items we've talked about today, put them on, then at the bottom, are you, is this something you're interested in? And then check yes or no. You can do both, I think, in the same, obviously, in the same
Okay,
letter.
I understand.
Yeah, okay.
Not a
That's all.
problem.
Yeah, but I think we need to distinguish between what's best for the city and best for the Rock Springs Ridge people. I think the decision we make will not be, I think our decision will be that Rock Springs Ridge has the ability to do what they want to do, not that I'm not here to mandate what Rock Springs Ridge does,
Okay.
period. That's for the Rock Springs residents to do. So I don't think, you're not going to be playing separate roles here. We as a commission, I want to give them the opportunity to buy it or not buy it. That's all I want to give them.
Well, I'm doing two roles as such, and so is Commissioner Smith, because we're residents, so we're entitled to vote yes or no also.
Of course.
But what I'm saying is you could vote yes to move it forward, and the residents still have to vote in a majority for it to be approved. So we're not making the decision. We're making the decision to give them the right to do this deal.
And
Does that make sense?
It does make sense, but in order to get to that, what you're saying, to get to that deal, you at least have to know just a general consensus. Are you interested?
Yeah.
It would be like anything else. Are you interested in doing something? If the consensus is yes, then you move to
Yeah.
step 2.
Yeah.
But what I'm hearing is that in 2 weeks, you're gonna have this HOA meeting, and you're gonna have all of us there, and that's where we're gonna disseminate all this information. And what you're gonna have are the residents who want to participate, and then the residents who don't aren't gonna come out, and we're not gonna know the majority at that public venue.
I think this whole process from April 27th, when the mayor made his presentation and you all were on stage together with him, there was a significant 500, 600, 700 person
right.
outcry.
So.
This is where I'm going to interject, because,
Go ahead.
again, that should not be indicative of, there could have been people there that were part of the audience that were in the dissent, right? So to Commissioner Velasquez's point, whenever you all survey your neighborhood, it's not just a binary yes or no. It needs to be a binary yes or no with facts to support it. If I'm voting yes, I need to know some financial facts to say, this is the obligation I'm going to have as a resident within Rock Springs Ridge. If that doesn't go out, that's a miss. Because I don't want to get up on any stage in any near future if none of that has been if the people in Rock Springs Ridge haven't been educated on that topic.
Understand?
Yeah.
Yep.
Commissioner Smith?
We're on the same page.
Okay.
Thank you.
Commissioner
Did
Banks?
you have two
appreciate it.
questions, Dan? Did you have two questions?
No, I
You're all
did
set.
not.
Okay.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Gary. Anybody else, Susan? Good? Okay. All right, consent agenda. Any items on the consent agenda you need to pull?
Just one for discussion on 6, because I see it's accept the third quarter budget to actual report. I just want to get a couple answers or questions answered, if I could, just general in nature. So when I look at that report, and I don't think it's just a quarterly report, it looks like it's total year-to-date.
Commissioner, it is year-to-date. This is the last meeting, 2 meetings ago, we gave you a quarter at that point.
Right.
It's really annual.
So this is,
So
wait,
this is, you're gonna get it monthly, once we're caught up. Now that we're caught up, you're gonna get it monthly, but it'll be for the whole year, so you can see the yearly picture.
sorry, so I should view this as a 9+3 because we're through 9 months of fiscal actual.
9, 10, 11, yeah, this is a 9.
Because it's not
Year-
calendar year-to-date,
Correct.
it's fiscal year-to-date.
Fiscal
correct?
year-to-date,
Okay.
so it's 9 months.
So I'm looking at it and it's interesting because, and again, I need to know, is all revenue up till June 30th actually in this and recognized revenue within this reporting? Or would there be any other revenue pools that aren't reflected in here?
There could be some revenue pools that aren't in here. If there's state revenues that we haven't received or grant revenues we haven't received by June 30th, they won't be in here. Vladimir and her group would show up in your next month's report.
But all revenues
But
that
all
we've-
reven-
that we've
revenues-
received either through Duke or the portions of the CARES Act money, is that reflected in here? Would that be July?
That we didn't get that until July. That'll be on your next month.
Okay. So what's interesting to me when I look at the general, I'll just isolate general fund to start with. If I take, and again, I'm straight lining here because I don't have any other
Right.
reasons to say not to. But if I take 9 months worth of actuals and divide it by 9 times it by 12 to annualize it, only 3 of our funds actually are on track to spend their budgeted amount. Does that feel right?
So-
Because it seems like if I take our annualized revenue and our annualized expense, we're like 10.4 million to the good just in general fund.
In general fund,
You take all your revenue, your ad valorem all comes in early, so you keep spending down.
Correct.
The ad valorem.
your revenue number's not gonna
Yeah,
not gonna
yeah.
grow like it's growing now. It gets less as each quarter.
And
as
that's
you
why
know.
that's
But
why
you
I'm
also, you do have, your revenue will also grow if we receive, for example, I will tell you that this doesn't include the rescue money, but it does include the monies that you received from Duke for the municipal service tax. So that revenue's in here. So that's why revenues are really big. But that money, you've already earmarked some of it. So you're right, it would have that. And
But yeah, I mean, I guess in your head, where are you projecting end of this fiscal year's revenue? Because budget-wise, we were projecting 53 according to the report.
So if you look at, I guess when you look at this report, the funds that are most significant to look at are your general fund and your operating utility fund. The other funds that are capital improvement funds, it's hard to compare them because they could, depending on when projects start, stop, or allocated, that could be 20%, 90%, 80%. So they're a whole different subset to look at. But you're right, when you look at the general fund and the operating fund, you should be, that 9 months through the year, roughly you would say you're about 75% of the way through the year, should be close to 75%. Granted, there could be vacancies that haven't been filled, that's gonna have some information. There could be expenses, there are a couple expenses. The other night you asked a question, Commissioner, about the water department or whatever. They had less electric charge, so they had some savings there or whatever. But looking at this, yeah, you can draw that conclusion, with the exception of some expenses may have been paid that haven't been refunded yet from a grant or whatever in here, so that you could have that. You could have some revenues that are in here that are not for necessarily for this budget, they're for future, like that municipal service tax. That $3 million's in here, but you gotta pretty almost take that right out of the chute because we haven't spent any of that yet. So, yeah, so you can look at it by that factor. And I think going forward monthly, this is a catch-up. I think going forward each month will be better to see than this whole, putting all this together in one piece.
Yeah,
And
because
as we get-
because what this tells me, without any, again, I don't have any, I'm just looking at data, just the numbers, right? I think it'll be helpful as we mature this report to have some level of insight to say, hey, I'll just pick out a fund here, police field services. If I annualize their current spend, it's 7.1 million versus a budget of 8.9. So the data would suggest that you'll have a $1.8 million underspend on that particular fund. And so if we have a big bolder number like that, obviously we want to know, what's driving that.
Right.
Is it because we just don't have the staff there, or is it some other reason that spend is intended to be in the last quarter of the year? Because right now, in general fund, it's 34% that we would have to spend across all expenditures just for that quarter. Whereas if it was flat, it'd be 25% across.
Right, it would be that. And as we move forward, we'll be able to give you that. So what we'll be able to do, and one of the things that I will encourage you is the briefings that we do with you. I think this will be a good spot for that as well, where we could actually dig into this deeper. If you want to go in line by line, if some of those, maybe it's a quarter or a month, your particular month you want to look at. But we'll also, now that things are caught up and we'll have things where they need to be, we can address those issues and show you that. This is a weird year because we've had, you got sale of property that has come in. So this year, the revenues are weird this year. But on a normal year, it would be, you'd see that difference or whatever. And keep in mind that when you look at police and fire, when you look at other budgets, they usually are one cost center. But when you look at police and fire, they have like police, I think they have 4 cost centers. They have the chief's office, field services, support services, they have dispatch. When you look across those, they're separate cost centers, but when you look across those, people move between them during the year. If someone gets promoted or someone, passes their paramedic, they move into one fund or another. So you kind of have to look at those as this is police.
Yeah, it kind of goes back to the whole, like the OCPS school thing, right? You have a number, but without context, there could be some reasons why numbers are what they are.
Right, and so we'll be able to explain that.
The biggest thing I would key in on, though, is the revenue side on the wastewater operating funds, water and wastewater and some of those other places, because it seems like from what we budgeted in terms of what we're expecting revenue to what we're pacing to right now, unless there's just a big influx of revenue in the last quarter, looks like we're materially off.
Well, and I will tell you there, and what we can do is we can make a note that going forward, that is an enterprise fund. And an enterprise fund, they always have what we call a 13th month that will, so the last month of the fiscal year for the utility operating fund will accrue a whole month back because we bill in arrears. So that you're gonna see 2 months actually in the last month. But we can make some notes. If we make notes then on there for those particular items, you'll be able to understand how to read that.
Yeah, because absent that, I'd become dangerous with the numbers. And I don't want to make false assumptions on what I'm seeing if I'm just straight lining.
Right. So we'll put notes on there and then.
Okay.
So that.
Okay,
Thank you.
anybody else?
Other than that, just number one, obviously, it's down the stream, so I'm willing to consent what's already been decided
Oh,
at
you
that point.
know
But I
what?
did want to make a
Do you
mention.
want to pull that out and then, so you can vote no on that one item?
We can, I mean, it's a moot point at this point.
Oh, the number
I
one.
mean, it's whatever you want to do. If you'd like us to pull it out, and we can vote that separately.
Yes,
Sure.
We can, that's fine.
that's,
Okay, but I did want to comment on number 3. I think that
Sure.
is a tremendous thing for our ability to respond and
Oh, yeah, the chief's, I think he's here. I was gonna bring it up next meeting, but we can go ahead and let you know what so yeah, Orange County Sheriff's Office, is he here? I don't see him. Stepped out? He's probably still eating, yeah. Well, anyway, they came to us, so they've got this brand new, not brand new, but a really nice command center
Command
that
center.
they were willing to donate to us. There he is. You finished eating, Chief? Come forward, they want to talk about the command center, so you.
No, just comment.
Well, no, I
on it. It's
mean,
tremendous.
we'll tell you what, we got a kind of a good plan here, I think.
I apologize. Somebody wanted to talk baseball, so I was out talking baseball about my son. So, where are we at?
Command center.
Just a brief overview of it. The Sheriff's Office, using Urban Area Security Initiative funding in 2004, applied for a mobile command post. They received the vehicle. It's a 2006 Freightliner. They received it in 2006. A little over $1 million at the time. It's been kept indoors. They have a great big warehouse facility. They keep all their specialty vehicles in. It hasn't been exposed to the exterior. We went down and looked at it a couple weeks ago. I took Charlie from Fleet. I took Mr. Hippler from IT. Looked at it, make sure everything was functioning properly, everything was working. They did just take it to Freightliner and have Freightliner go through it, and they fixed a couple of things, a couple of hydraulic lines for the slide outs and everything. Our current command post is extremely small. This gives us about 3 times the ability, 3 times the space of what we currently have. It has a front room for communications, a back room for command staff, for decision makers. It's a vehicle that we can use with police and fire as a unified command if we have to during a critical incident. So it provides us with a lot of opportunity. They put it out to all the police chiefs to give it to somebody because they used UASC funding. They can't sell it. It has to be first given to somebody within the UASC region. Fortunately, I was on my email at the time. I was the first one to the well, and Winter Garden was interested in it. I claimed first right of refusal. They gave me first right of refusal, so we are going to accept it, or as long as you all approve it, we're going to accept it. We've offered Winter Garden our current command post. It does have a little issue with some softness in the floor of it. We're going to fix that. The Winter Garden police chief's out of town until July 26th. When he comes back, we are going to have him come down and look at it, and if they want it, then I believe we're going to request that you all allow us to donate it to the Winter Garden Police Department, so we'll just be passing down assets.
Okay.
So, yeah, well, thanks, Chief. That was a great, great
Anything else?
pickup. Any
All right.
questions for Chief on that one?
Again,
Okay.
Apologize I wasn't in here.
All right. Now you go back to talk baseball. All right, so on the consent agenda, we want to approve all items 2 through 6. Motion to approve.
So move.
Got a motion by Commissioner Bankson,
Second.
second by Commissioner Becker. All those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Now, next up, approve and execute the purchase and sale agreement for Camp Weewak. Motion to approve.
So moved.
Got a motion by Commissioner Smith,
Second.
second by Commissioner Becker. All those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Same reasons last time, nay, but I'm an enthusiastic supporter and I believe it will succeed. So-
Okay, so 1 no. Commissioner Bankson.
I
All
put it
right.
down. No.
And I'll
Okay.
donate my beard to be shaved if we raise enough money.
All right. Edward?
Mayor and Commissioners, the item that you have before you tonight is, as you know, every year we have to set the proposed millage rate and notify the property appraiser so that they can mail the notices of out for the property taxes for the upcoming FY22 fiscal year. It's been a long week. We've had 3 workshops. We finished one up today. Been through all the line items of the departments, heard their requests, heard their needs, heard their issues. And so the budget you have tonight, and I'm going to go through it for the public's benefit as well. What I've done is I've taken it and tried to make it a little larger on the PowerPoint. Some of the same, the packet that you have, make it larger on the PowerPoint so we can go through, I'm going to try to go through the lines as best I can. I'm going to try to cover everything that we've covered in the workshops and cover significant items that I think you need to be aware of. Keep in mind, as you look through this budget, it does not include Camp Weewak. You have just recently approved the purchase agreement for Camp Weewall, so now Camp Weewall will need to be put into this budget. But as you saw today tonight at 5 o'clock in your workshop from the Recreation Department, that is pretty much kind of a break-even scenario. So what we will do is this budget will go up, the revenues will go up by a little over $1 million, and the expense side will go up by a little more than $1 million. You will also see that Camp Weewall is going to be a separate cost center. So you will see, what will be added to this budget is, you will see a separate line cost center for Camp Weewall that will be under Recreation's budget, because we're going to keep those expenditures separate. So that will be included in this budget as well. That being neutral, roughly, we're saying that's going to be, kind of break even. It won't have an impact on needing an increase into the revenues at this point. So you won't see that in this. Keep in mind also that this budget, and I'll go through each one of them and tell you what's included from the workshops. So as we went through those workshops and the departments told you what was in and what was out, I'll go over those again so you have those. The other thing I want you to keep in mind as we go through, and as I go through the revenues, I'll show you if we're using any reserves and specific reserves. I will highlight those for you as well, because I know if you remember, we talked about using some of the Duke Energy dollars to fund certain projects that you've designated. I'll point those out where they are in this budget as we move forward as well. I'm trying to make sure that I go from the top, and I think that's everything before we get started. I want to make sure that you had kind of the scenario of where we are, and I'll go through each line now.
So who was tracking that over the last 3 days? Because again, there was a lot of variation between what was in our original packets on Friday, what was presented to us, some of the stuff today that we didn't even see until right before the meeting. How confident should we feel like this is the budget? I mean,
So the budgets that you got were the original budgets that the department submitted. Then the administration, myself, and the mayor went through these budgets with the departments. The presentations that they presented to you reflect those changes. They spoke of those changes that were changed from the original budget packet that you have to what you will see in this packet. This packet includes the original numbers that you saw, less from their presentations, whatever that was adjusted from those presentations, which they presented to you, all those adjustments that they made are reflected in this document. And when I go through, I'll point those out to you so you can see that they match with
well,
their
I guess
workshops.
that's what stage do we get, because again, I'm the detail guy. When do we get revised line item sheets for each fund? Because we don't have access to that right now to understand if what you're saying at a summary level maps and foots to what we've discussed over the past 3 days.
Well, what we can do is this budget will have those changes that they talked about. We can get you those worksheets that you have. We can bring those worksheets to match these changes, which they have, because that's what they presented to you. So we can give you those with the actual changes to each, what lines were changed, so that you have that.
Yeah, because I guess how you frame your presentation, because I saw the lead-in packet and what the staff recommendation is for millage rate.
Right.
Over the past 3 days, it's gonna be a tough sell, but go for it.
Right, and I will tell you, staff presented this based on the direction that we heard from City Council as we moved through the last several months. So, and I'll point that out. Again, at the end of the day, it's the wishes of the council. We'll take the direction, staff will take the direction from the City Council on where they want to do that. But we did listen to all of the concerns and all of the prior meetings and things that we talked about that we would do or that we would bring back, that we told the public. And so we'll point those out. But you're right, Commissioner, tonight is the night you set that rate. And so once you set the rate, it's very difficult to change the rate. It's very difficult to go up, I should say that. You set the rate tonight, it's hard to go up. We can go up later, but it requires a lot of posting, filing. It's very difficult. But you can go down. So just keep that in mind. Wherever you set the rate, you can go down. It's very easy to go down before we get to September, but it's hard to go up. So keep that in mind. The other thing is, I want the public to know, and I'll say it at the end, you're also setting your tentative public hearing, your first tentative public hearing, which will show on their property tax bill, proposed property tax bill when they get it. So tonight, you will also set that meeting. There are 2 hearings that will be held after 5 o'clock. And both of those hearings, again, the budget will be presented, the whole budget after, because keep in mind, there could still be changes between now and September. It happens across all jurisdictions. It's very common. And I say that because The numbers you're going to see in here tonight, and I will mention that as we move through them, the state numbers are not finalized. They are still working. The Revenue Estimating Council has not met. They don't plan to meet until August, sometime in August. Just like we had last year with COVID, it was difficult because they kept telling us, couldn't get a number, tried to get a number. And so they've given us some estimates, and I'll go through, when we go through those, I'll tell you where those are. And then I anticipate that there'll be changes to those revenue numbers between now and September, time we get to September, hopefully to the positive, I'm hoping. So, all right. So with that, I'll start with the budget calendar. It's in your packet. I talked a little bit about the dates earlier about setting the public hearings. You can see that we are here tonight to set the proposed millage rate. The last 3 days, you can see the 19th through the 21st, we had the workshops that we just recently went through it with each of the departments. The other half of the calendar, and I broke this up because I wanted it to be a little larger for the public and for online as well. So, and hopefully, you can read this and it's a little clearer. So we have to notify the property appraiser by the 30th. That's what we're doing tonight, of the proposed rate. There are dates set in here if we need to have another workshop. There is, if necessary, if the council would like to have another workshop, that date is in here. The CRA budget, the Community Development Director will bring you that budget with the CRA board on August the 18th at 6 o'clock. As you know, that's a separate board, separate budget. They set that budget and then we move it over into the citywide budget. There you can see, we're anticipating the date to be September the 8th. You will set that tonight for the first reading or the tentative budget for the first reading and public hearing at 5:15 here at City Hall. We have to submit an ad to the paper before the next meeting because we have to publish it in the local paper. It's a requirement. And then we will have our second reading and our second public hearing, which will be the final meeting to adopt the millage rate and the budget on September the 15th, 2021. And then we have to have everything submitted to Department of Revenue by October 1 to start the new fiscal year. I think I want to point out again here, we had a council meeting for September the 1st that we canceled. We've already approved that. It's already reflected on our website, but I want to point that out again. There will not be a meeting on September the 1st. We will have it on September the 8th. We will have the tentative workshop first at 5:15. We will have the regular city council meeting at 1:30, and then we will come back at 5:15 to do the first public hearing because we are required to have it after 5 o'clock. And then the September 15th meeting will be the normal meeting, but we will do the budget hearing first at 6 o'clock, and then 7 o'clock will be our regular city council meeting. Authorized positions. So I want to kind of first go over our personnel and the changes to our personnel. As you can see, based on from the workshops that you had over the last 3 days, the finance department has requested to remove one of the positions. So you can see that this reflects the removal of that position. The transfers that you see in the center, those are just where people have transferred from one division to another. There's no impact. It's not an additional employee. It's just if they've been promoted from one department or one cost center to another center, that's what that movement is. You can see down in support services for police. So you might ask, where are the 10 police officers? They're not in here. As you know, their capital and their equipment is all in here. We're waiting to hear from the grant, or the COPS grant. That will be an adjustment. Once we hear back from the COPS grant, that would be an adjustment that we would make to this line. You see one additional support services, new added employee. That's the code enforcement officer that the police department talked about adding. So that is included in this budget. You see 2 dispatch positions for dispatch communications. If you recall, the police chief talked about would like to add 2 dispatch positions. They're included in this budget. Community development, as you heard this evening, this evening, building safety is adding 2 positions. As you heard from them, they're adding their inspector and then their permit clerk have both been included in this budget. Moving down into public services, as you heard from sanitation department yesterday, they've requested to add a sanitation equipment operator. That's been included in this budget. Facilities maintenance, there was an electrician that was requested. It's also been added into this budget, is included in these numbers. Parks and athletics and events. You'll see that there's 5 total positions here. 3 have been added into parks, and 2 have been added into athletic events. And if you recall from the presentations from the recreation department, there were savings. We lost our inmate program. Our inmate program went away, and there were savings in other areas within the budget that he is taking those savings and applied them to adding these positions into the budget. So overall, you can see last year we had approved authorized positions 479. We've added 12 new positions in this budget. We have deleted 1 position or removed 1 position, so we are at a total of 490 total authorized full-time positions in this proposed budget.
Now, the clerk's office, where they were wanting to
Yeah.
move from the part-time to the full-time, is that position still there? It's just we're adding the difference in the cost?
No, so that position's not here. Now, so on the bottom of this schedule, you'll see the part-time positions.
Okay.
So you can see from looking at this at the bottom that the clerk assistant is still in the budget as a part-time position. So the part-time position's funded, it's not moved up, it has not been budgeted as
So
a.
this does not reflect the 25,000?
It does not
more
reflect the
that would take to move that.
25,000 that we would add additional for that position. The other positions you can see on the bottom are your part-time positions that each department went over. Your park rangers are part-time, your seasonal employees. You'll see those positions that are all funded. Millage rate. So this is the schedule that shows you the millage rate. From fiscal year 21 to fiscal year 22, our tax base went up almost a little over $397 million. That is a big year. 10.4% increase in assessed value, taxable assessed value. You can see last year that our tax base generated almost $15.5 million based on the millage rate of 4.2876. This current budget, FY22, is balanced using 4.1876, which is the 1/10 of a mil reduction. And that reduction, if you recall, when we had to make the significant change to the municipal service tax, there was an additional $1 million generated that's going to hit lots of our citizens, our commercial or industrial, with that $1 million will hit them through the municipal service tax. If you recall, we had to make that change based on Florida statute because we couldn't cap that rate. We had to make a change to that rate. So this budget that you see, and when I get to that line, I'll show you, will generate an additional $1 million from the municipal service tax from the electric, water, and gas bills. So we had mentioned that we would look at the tax rate to provide some, since we're increasing the municipal service tax, that we would look at the property tax to see what we could, if there was something that we could do. This budget has a small reduction in the millage rate to allow for that. With that millage rate of 4.1876, it will generate an additional $1.2 million over the last fiscal year, or about almost 8%, 7.8% increase in property tax revenue. The scenarios on the bottom are if you were to go to the rollback rate, what it would generate. If you were to maintain the same current rate, what it would generate. And then by the reduction in the mill, the 0.10 mill is a $400,000 reduction to the budget. Projected general fund revenues, as you can see, property taxes represent 41.5% of the revenues that come in to fund the general fund. Licenses and permits, 12%. Intergovernmental revenue, that's your sales tax and your money's coming from other governments, is 19%. Charges for services are 7%. Fines and forfeitures are a little less than we're right at 1%. Miscellaneous revenue is about 2.1%. Other financing sources are 0. We're not borrowing any money to balance this budget from any financial institution. Transfer from other funds, there is about 13% transfer from other funds. Transfer from restricted funds, those are the dollars I'm going to talk about when we get to the revenues. Those are the fund balance that was actually restricted for a specific purpose. It can only be used for that purpose. So that's a separate piece. And then 2.8% is a transfer from the reserve. So we're using 3% 3% of this budget is being balanced with the reserves. And as you know, we have built those reserves to right at 32% that you saw from the auditor. So, this impact on the reserves will still leave the reserves at that 25% or close to that 25%.
Did you say 42%? Because I remember him saying.
32. I meant to, I'm sorry, but
You
it's
said 32.
Oh,
32.
he did say 32? Okay, I thought he said 42.
I think it's actually 32.7, but
Yeah,
32%
27,
roughly.
yeah. I was like, really?
Projected general fund expenditure, so this is the other side. I'm sorry, let me go back. So your budget is balanced currently at the millage rate, the 4.18, right at $57 million. This is almost a 9% increase over last year's fiscal year budget. So it's one of the biggest increases we've had in the general fund in a long time. So I want you to see that number because that's the number we have to balance to. So that's your revenue side of the house. When you go around to the expenditure side, you can see that the public safety is 60%. It hovers around that percentage in just about every jurisdiction. And as you can see with all the money that's coming in, that it still is maintaining that 60%. So there's a big chunk going to public safety of this budget, and we'll see that when we go through the lines. Community development is a little over 4.5% of the budget. Recreation's 10%, kind of common in a lot of areas. If you look across jurisdictions, 10% is pretty good. Public services is 5%, a little more than 5%. Debt service is 4%. Transfer to other funds is 2.4%. Administration is 11.7%, and the finance department is right at 1.8%. You might ask, what is transfer to other funds? Because that is something that is a lot of times is a big place to look. If you recall in last year's budget, you did an additional transfer to the streets fund of $453,000. That transfer is still continued into the next fiscal year. So we're maintaining that transfer to the streets fund that you directed last year to go for mowing and to help with streetlights and mowing and paving. Is still going there, in addition to some additional monies, and I'll talk about those when we get to those lines. So you can see on the expenditure side, it's balanced at $57 million. So this budget is currently balanced at the millage rate that I talked about, the 4.1876. So on the revenue side, you can see I talked about the property tax earlier. And you can see it's $16.7 million. That's 7%, a little more than 7% increase that I talked about. In property taxes on the other spreadsheet, there is that number, there's those revenues. If you look down to the utility tax electric, 43% increase in that revenue. And you can see that revenue was $3.1 million projected. Now it's 4.4. $1 million of that revenue is related to the change in the municipal service tax that was implemented. If you recall, earlier in the year, that took effect on July 1 of this current year. Moving down, most of these revenues haven't changed very much, so there's not a lot of significant increase from one year to the next in these lines. This is another area that's very critical and good to watch. If you look, this is your intergovernmental revenues. You can see that the state revenue sharing number is down. So the projection that they gave us last year, the number that they're giving us for the new year is just a tweak below what it was in this current year that we're trying to meet. And if you recall, we've been doing those financial updates every month. We're not meeting that number either. So that's why we're watching all of this. So these are the numbers the state has given us so far. Again, these numbers will probably change when the Revenue Estimating Council meets in August. Moving down, you'll see the local government half-cent sales tax. This is your big sales tax number. This is the actual sales tax number that's split with the county, with all the jurisdictions. You can see that that's a little over 2% increase in that number, but it's relatively flat. We used to see increases here anywhere from 6 to 7% a year. So these revenues are down, and the projection for 22 is not much of an increase over what we're currently sitting at. So again, they're still meeting. These numbers could change. But overall, if you look at this, you have less than 2% increase in your sales tax revenue, and that's a big revenue source. Together, that's been $10 million plus over the years. And so I think that's important that we watch that number. Moving down, you'll see that the fees for the Orange County services. This is our contract that we have to provide services to the Orange County service area. There's a 3% increase in here. Again, this is the ad valorem revenue that we get from the county to provide the service, the fire service to that area or those citizens. This number could change too because they're still tweaking. This number is also dependent on the Orange County's tax rate. So it depends on where they set. So we've added a 3% increase in here for growth in tax value, but it could change. Moving down, recreation program activity fees, you see that $850,000. That's the number that Mr. Foreman showed you in his revenue calculations. That's the number he thinks that he can obtain. That's where he thinks what he can generate this year based on his programs and based on all of his expenses. Fines and forfeitures, this number has had a decrease. Again, during COVID, the courts, a lot of the courts were closed. The courts, they weren't hearing a lot of cases. We anticipate this number, we're leaving this number where it's at because we anticipate this number will come back. But again, we'll have to watch this closely as well. This had a big impact. COVID really impacted this revenue source because it's up to the courts things have to go through the court system before we can get any of these fines or revenues. Miscellaneous revenues, these are interest income. There's no changes to this item. This line's much. We have reduced the investment income. As you know, due to the market, they're not increasing. Rates of banks have actually, and investments have actually decreased, but we still have a revenue number there. Non-operating revenues. So this is the last group of these revenues, and you can see I talked about reserves, funding from restricted reserves and funding from reserves. So what I want to point out here is that the funding from reserves, 300,000 of that 1.6 million that we're using from the reserves is the money from the Duke Energy municipal service tax to fund a portion of the fire engine. Because if you remember, you designated a portion of that to go to the fire engine. The fire engine's funded in this budget with 300,000 coming from reserves, which was the money that came from the municipal service tax that is now sitting in your reserve. And then the difference related to this is actual coming right from the general fund reserve. So it's coming right out of that fund. As you can recall, last year we used $926,000 from the reserves to balance the budget. So funding from restricted reserve, it's a new line this year. You haven't seen that before. I think it's important. Reserves are as you know, are broken out by restricted, committed, assigned, unassigned. And there are reserves in there that can only be spent for one purpose. And this 500,000 represents, if you recall from the building department, they talked about doing digitalizing their records. And I talked about we have a fee that we charge for storage retention fee that can be used to help us retain those documents. So 100,000 of that they've requested 100,000. The 100,000 from this revenue will be used to pay for those charges. So the difference is $400,000. So the $400,000, there were some monies that when we had our franchise agreement years ago, the city council years ago did a franchise agreement with Duke Energy to do a 30-year franchise agreement. And in that agreement, there were some funds that were restricted that were to be used for, the money came from Duke, but we had to use it for lights. So we had to use it for improvements to lights or things that would kind of help Duke Energy, if you will, or help us, with our agreement with them to put up lighting. So what we've done is we've taken the $400,000 that I talked about. If you remember, I said there was $400,000 in the streets fund that we put in the streets fund to help with street lights. We're using these dollars because these dollars have been earmarked and they've been sitting in that fund. And so we're going to use these dollars because that's what we have. We have no choice. We have to put it back into lighting. So we're going to use this, and when we bring you those, we're getting estimates from them now. When we get those estimates, we'll bring those back to the city council so you can see which sections where we're gonna allocate those funds based on the numbers that Duke Energy brings back to us from Pam. If you remember back from Pam Richmond's presentation, she showed you the areas that we were getting estimates from Duke. So we'll be able to, this will give us funding for those lights.
Let me ask you, how many lights do you think we can get for 400,000?
Commissioner, I wish I could tell you, but I will tell you it's expensive when they have to put in, for example, I know one of the areas we're looking at is Martin, and we're looking at Hiawassee. Hiawassee been on our radar for a while. Because there's no infrastructure in the ground in Hiawassee, there's no poles, there's no infrastructure, it's very costly. So I can't tell you exactly, but what we'll do is we'll bring back those estimates so you can see, what it costs for those sections, and then we can prioritize that list and fund them based on the wishes of the council.
Okay.
So moving down, you'll see that there's no change in the transfers from the departments. Keep in mind, we talked about transfers from the utility fund. We talk about that every year. The rate study is, we talked to the rate study folks this week. They're getting closer to wrapping up and getting that done. So they're going to bring you that, because that was one of the things we asked them to do, was to look at this transfer between funds to make sure that we had good concrete data and information for that transfer. You'll see that when it comes. So, but because don't have that data, we're going to maintain that transfer where it is. So that's the revenue side, and so you can see that additional 8.8%, revenues are up 8.8%. You can see that it's balanced at the $57 million. Last year was $52 million. So right at $4.6 million more this year than we had last year in revenues. So on the expenditure side, so we'll start first in general government. As you can see, these were in the workshop that you heard today. These are all the general government services that you heard from the presentations in the workshop. So you might ask why. I wanted to go through each one of these. For in the mayor's office, you see there's a reduction there. That reduction is, it's sad and unfortunate, but Commissioner Dean passed away, and so his retirement check was in there or whatever that he got, and so that is a portion we removed from the budget. There were some calculations on those retirement, the way those were budgeted. There were some savings because they were budgeted a little higher than what they needed to be. So that's where you see there. But it's not a big number, it's minor. But either way, we've looked at everything in this budget, every line. So legal and risk services, you can see there's a big decrease of $300,000. That's related to the insurance rates. So the property and casualty insurance renewal, the rates that we've got, there's some big savings there. So it paid off to go out and do that RFP. It's paying off. And Christy and Michael's office have done a great job, trying to stay on top of those cases and trying to make sure that, that we're doing the best that we can so we don't have a lot of these claims and payouts. Administration, you can see my budget's very minor. The city clerk's budget, you can see it's down. So you'll ask, why is it down if she's got an election coming? There were some changes in her, to her recording fees when she was talking about doing the codification. That's a big cost. And so we're only doing the codification one time a year. Since our code is electronic, we're only going to do the paper copy one time a year. So you have some savings there. Finance, very minimal, and you heard those changes. Human resources is up $26,000. This budget, you have a full staff. You have if you recall, Joe talked about a few places where he had a little additional revenue, that he increased revenue. Also, when I talked about my budget, the training that was in my budget is now in this budget. So mine's down, this budget's up because we put that training into HR so that they can administer that training. IT's budget is up $242,000. If you recall, if you look back in IT's budget, he had more capital this year than he had in prior years related to the Motorola system and a couple other things. And I do want to point out here, and I've talked to Rob in IT, and there were a couple items, if you remember, that were on his wish list that were dealt with the cybersecurity that he was concerned about, that he wanted to add. Those numbers will be added in the budget that you see in September. So that's one of those, Commissioner Becker, that's one of those that changed from after the workshops that we had, because we didn't know. It was on the wish list, but they're critical and they're ones that he wants to get in, and so that will be added to this number when we get to
So that's not here, that's gonna be added.
that'll be added. And that's, yes, and that's about $80,000, so. So public safety. So if you see here, fire and EMS is up almost $1.3 million or 9% increase in this fund. The big items in this fund are the $30,000 for training that the chief talked about. That training money is in this budget. The $600,000 for the little more than $600,000 for the fire engine that I talked about, where we funded part of it with the Duke Energy, the Duke Energy dollars. That is in this budget as well. So you might ask, why did EMS go down? We had promotions during the year, and when you have we have retirees that have retired, and we have promotions. And what happens is when we promote someone, that position goes back and becomes a firefighter position for a new up-and-coming firefighter, and so they move out of EMS and move into suppression until they receive their paramedic certificate. So all paramedics are in EMS, and then if they're not a paramedic, they're in suppression. So moving down into the police budget, you can see that it's up almost 12% or $2 million. And the majority of this, as you heard from the chief, is for the 10 new police officers. There are 10 vehicles funded. There are 10 startup units, startup uniforms, and all of the stuff that's required for each officer. So those dollars are in here. His vehicle replacement is in here. As you know, he's replacing vehicles every year on his vehicle replacement program. They're in here as well. We did, when we talked in the budget, if you remember in the original budget, the chief talked about body cameras. And he had that in his budget, but then he found out after we put the budget together, that there might be a grant opportunity for that. So that is not in this budget, not included in this number. But once we hear back from the grant people, for the grant, if we're going to see the grant or not, that number we'll have to make an adjustment to this budget based on what we hear from the grant.
When will we hear
folks.
from them?
Um,
Do we know? I mean, before the end
The
of
chief,
September?
I think, had said he'd hope by the end of September on some of these and some of the other departments. We don't know if we're going to hear by the end of September, but I will tell you, when we come back to the public hearings in September, if we've heard from any of those grant people, we will make those adjustments in here for you. So and I think Mayor's going to give you that list of all the grants, so you'll have that. And when we come back in September, if we've been awarded any of them, we will get them in here and show you where we've added them. And the ones that we didn't get or we're still waiting on, we'll let you know where those are as well. Keep in mind, if we're awarding a grant that comes after September 30th, so we're done. Say we're done with the budget, it's adopted, and we get awarded a grant, we would come back with a budget amendment. So we would amend the budget if they award us the grant to put our share in and to set the budget up, because that's what you have to do. You have to set an amendment legally. You have to approve and set the budget amendment under a resolution.
But we cannot include that in budget, or there goes the grant.
Correct.
Right.
So we need to make sure that if the grant doesn't come through, we have enough reserve there to be able to go ahead and
Correct.
accomplish these things.
So you need to keep those in mind as we hear back from those grants. And hopefully we'll hear from a couple of them before September, and that will help us. But if not, the list that you have of the grants, we'll be monitoring those as well to fund those. And you're right, we'd have to fund those from reserve because our budget is balanced currently the way it sits. So you'd have to use your reserves if you want to fund the other portion of the grant.
And with the 10 additional officers that we're adding, we can't put that in because of the grant, but the grant is only 75%, right? It's not the total amount to fund those 10
Correct.
officers.
Correct.
So
So
is
we
this
would-
including 25%?
No, it does not include the 25%. So,
Can't put it in the budget.
yeah, we don't want to
Right.
include anything related to that until we
Yeah.
hear
So
from them.
we
and
have the
then we'll
full
put our
amount that
match.
we need to be prepared
Yes.
if that doesn't come through.
Yeah, now keep in mind, if you recall too, we earmarked $250,000 for grants going forward. So we have a designation account sitting there with $250,000 that if we were to award a grant and we needed $50,000, it's there. So we can, we have the designation to fund that piece when it comes in. Now, if a grant comes in and you're awarded a $2 million grant, we have to have a $1 million match, then the city council would have to make an amendment to accept that grant for the additional dollars. Trying to think if there's anything. So there's no change. So The increase you also see in police, if you recall, in support services, you have your code enforcement officer. So that increase in here is the support, it also supports a new code enforcement officer as well. So with that, you can see public safety together is almost $3.3 million. Of your $4.6 million, 3.3 of it is going to the public safety. Community development. The only significant thing in community development is the building, and we talked about those. This $200,000 represents those 2 additional positions. So you've got the building inspector that I talked about, and the permit clerk is included in those numbers. Facilities maintenance is up a very big amount. As you can see, it's up 96%. And you saw when Joe Crisafulli presented his budget, a lot of the things that he said that we needed to work through on our facilities. And so we've injected a lot of funding into this line. He's added a position here, so you have an electrician. You also have a position that came out of the utility fund into the general fund because that position belongs in this fund. So that was a move. That's part of this increase. And then he moved an employee from the recreation department to here so that he would have a team for facilities maintenance. And I want to point out here that facilities maintenance has never had very many employees. We've always had 2 employees in facilities maintenance. And over the last couple of years, we've gone from 2 to 5 in this fund, and of course, you're adding an electrician. So it shows that, we've neglected our facilities, as you know, because you've approved some of these roof repairs and things that we've done, parking lots and things like that. And so we've slowly ramped this up because over the last 2 years, you've put a lot of money in here for roofs and stuff. So again, we're putting some more money into the facilities maintenance as well in this year, big chunk.
So have we planed out, in other words, is this something that we'll expect this will be a consistent amount to keep it consistently operating, or is this a bubble that we're catching up from the past? Will that go down?
I think a big portion, I shouldn't say a big portion of this, a portion of this is catch up.
Okay.
We're repairing roofs, we're repairing things, paving that you wouldn't normally do every single year. So we're catching up, we're doing some maintenance things that that we're catching up on, that require us to put a lot of capital up front or put a lot of dollars up front to catch up on some of those. And then I think you'll see this number come down and level off a little bit more in the future, but we're trying to catch up. And you can't catch up all in 1 year or 2 years. That's the issue. This is multiple years that we haven't had a program in place. And so now that Joe's come aboard, we got a program in place, which we started a little bit. They've done a good job, and they're working hard, and there's a lot that when you get a program in place, I think after this year, when we talk about budgets next year, you'll be able to actually kind of see where is that now that he's put these programs in place for AC replacements and things like that. You'll be able to see what this actual number would look like, because there's some significant capital in here that you wouldn't do every year. Now, that being said, there'll be a capital number that you will put in here for ongoing.
Right.
To maintain, but I think you'll see this number come down once we get some of these facility maintenance things taken care of.
And that's the big deal to me in the whole of the budget, that we're getting to that place where, like an engine that's out of tune, until you tune it in, it's running rough. But once we get there, that'll be a lot easier then to know what is the legitimate level that taxes should be at in order to operate with the same level of service that people really want to see, rather than it kind of hit and miss, and we throw a little bit this year, here and there, to where we can level it out.
Right.
So that's my long-term.
And I think, keep this in mind too, because as you heard from Joe, he wanted more people. So this number could become that number or get closer to that number, because as you add more people, that is going to, you may lose that capital piece, but it may go to the personnel side of the house. And kind of when you do that and it averages out, it can still be close to that number. We'll
the
know
revenue
that
should
number.
grow to match that eventually to where it planes out.
You'll know that number when you have all of your programs working and effectively in place.
Okay.
So down to fleet, you can see fleet's a very small adjustment, as Charlie told you. He got big pieces of equipment last year, so that's why his budget's down. Parks and Rec. So this area of the budget has had a little bit of an overhaul. As you know, cemetery and grounds were moved from streets into Parks and Grounds because we wanted those crews to be together so they could work on parks and grounds and cemetery all together, and streets could focus on potholes and signs and stripe or lines and things like that, because we wanted them to be able to focus on that, not have to worry about maintaining the grounds. Plus, we outsource, as you know, our mowing services, so that also helped put this in the right spot. And if you look across jurisdictions, you'll see that grounds and parks are together in almost in very big percentage of our other municipalities. Cemetery has a small increase, nothing significant there. There's a piece of equipment I think that they're getting, so that's why you have that increase. So with that being said, grounds and parks become one. So you can see the grounds budget is gone, but it goes over into the recreation parks budget. And so that's why you see that there. And then the athletics and events, we had programs, civic events, athletic events were separated. Now we're putting athletic and events together. They can manage it better. They feel they can manage it better with their staffs, whether it's an athletic event or a regular event. They all work together. So you can see that they're doing that. And then park rangers used to be separate. They have elected to put those into their athletic budget as well because they support the parks, the athletics and the events of the parks.
How many park rangers do we have?
We have 4.
Oh, they're all part-time or per diem?
They're all
seasonal?
part-time.
They're all part-time?
So when you look at the overall Parks and Recreation budget, it's up 13%, or $668,000. Now, the majority of that increase is, if you recall from Brian's budget, is almost $400,000 of that are lighting that he's putting out at the Northwest Recreation Facility, which was one of the items that came back on our survey. So these are some of those items that we don't have grants for. We've checked, we don't have grants for. They are things we can do now because we don't have to wait for drawings or designs for if we're going to add park or courts or whatever. So this is something that we can do because we have the funding now. The other thing here is in his budget, if you recall, he had the bathrooms for the amphitheater, which was also a big item on our list. He had the birding park was on that list. And so, and then the storage building for the, at the Frank Carlton Center, we're going to build a storage. We approved a storage, or designated some money for a storage facility for cemetery and recreation to remove those buildings that are there next to it and put in a nicer storage facility so that everybody has storage that they need. And that was $300,000. Those items were funded with your Duke Energy dollars. They're not in here because they are a budget amendment tonight that you will approve or not, but they are a budget amendment tonight that's under resolution. And once that amendment is established, they will be amended in the current budget, and that way we can start that process for those buildings once you approve that. And then if those projects carry over between now and next fiscal year, those dollars will just carry over. So that's a significant increase here. I also want to point out here in the parks while we're here, Camp Weewa is not in this budget. So keep in mind, I talked about we're going to do a separate cost center since Camp Weewa is new coming on. It's a new thing for the city, a new thing for our staff. We want to have a separate cost center for it. So we're going to separate, you're going to see, when we come back in September, you will see a line in here that is Camp Weewa. So, and those expenses will be there, and then the revenues will be on the revenue side of the house, so you can see the revenues and the expenses, and that way we can have a good picture of those going forward. So debt service. Debt service is down $680,000. We've, I think it's our 2016 vehicle loan, where we had some vehicle loans that have been out there for a while, paid off. So that one's paid off, so there's some savings there, or there's a reduction in the debt service for that payment. And then there were, if you recall, our 2018 loan for our vehicles that we had, as the life of that loan moved forward, as we progressed through that life, the principal payment was lower because some of those vehicles had a service life of 3 years or 5 years. And so we paid more on the front end instead of the back end. So that's why you see a savings here. And then your transfers, as you can see, I said earlier that the money that you approved last fiscal year, when we increased the extra eighth of a mil, you requested that go into the streets fund to fund resurfacing and help with that fund because that fund was suffering. That transfer was $1,014,000. So you can see there's an additional almost $400,000 increase in this fund. That $400,000 is the Duke monies that I talked about earlier that had to be spent on electrical projects. That's the 400 transferring from the general fund, restricted reserves, over into the streets fund to do the street lights that we talked about.
That Duke money was from what year? Oh, okay,
2000 and, you know what? I'll get that number for you.
yeah, because we have the Duke from this year, but you're referring to Duke money that we've
Correct.
had earmarked from years ago.
Correct.
Okay.
And I'll say there's been no outcry any longer like there was about why isn't this getting mowed, this and that. I don't know if others have heard that, but it's been significantly changed because, I think we did good to get on top of that.
Well, and to that point, Commissioner, I will tell you that we worked very hard with the vendor, and the vendor has worked very, very well with us. They struggled finding people during COVID, but the owner himself has been out mowing on the weekends. So I saw them out Sunday. They were working Sunday, asked me, could he work weekends? I said, you can mow whenever you want to mow. I said, yeah, just keep them up. Now, I will tell you, there's been a few spots that a few of you have called me and said this spot, that spot. What we're doing is, because there's so much, and trying to figure out which piece is ours, which piece is the county's, we're coordinating those changes that we're seeing and giving them to the vendor so that he knows when he's mowing next time, that's our piece too, because it's so convoluted. But once we get through this whole cycle, they'll know exactly how far they go, and where they stop.
It was literally the next day after that Lake McCoy, it was done, and
Well,
it looks great.
Ed has been excellent, because
Yeah.
I've given him about 5 different spots. Because when I see residents or they tell me this isn't mowed, I tell them, please don't go on Facebook. Give me the street and I will get it done. And it's been done within 2-3 days. And so, and then you figured out, does it belong to us? We
Right.
didn't know it belonged to us.
Yep.
So,
Yeah, I
it's
had the
been
same
good.
experience.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully you won't have to call me with those. Once he has them on his list, they'll be taken care of and you won't have that, so.
Yeah.
But I agree with you. We've made significant improvement there, and it looks really good. And they've been very good to work with. Like I said, they've struggled like everybody in COVID. They've been very good to work with. And you may see them mowing on Saturdays and Sundays, but, if that's what it takes, we told them that you can mow whenever you need to mow, so. So with that being said, you can see the budget's balanced at $57 million. So as we went through the budgets, and I know, like I said tonight, IT's already projected they're going to need another $80,000. There was talk about some other positions, part-time positions to full-time positions. Those dollars are not in what you currently see. The items that I went through tonight, that we went through in the workshops, are the items that are in. So any items that you add this evening, we would need to, balance that. Whatever, if you're going to take from something or add something or whatever, we need to make sure we're balanced. Do you have to have a balanced budget when you leave here tonight? No, but I would recommend it, because at the end of the day, you don't have to be balanced until September. But I think it's important, you're setting your millage rate, so when you set the millage rate, keep in mind that we can go down, but we can't go up. We can go up, it's just a very, very difficult process, or a lengthy process.
The business before us right now is just the millage rate, right?
That's all you have to do.
We have no ability to horse trade budget items at this point because, again, I don't have all the detail behind what
Right.
you just described.
And you're probably gonna have more between the time we get to September.
So, my thing is, again, sometimes the millage gets a lot of focus, right? It's at 4.28 right now. We're the lowest of any full-service city. I hate even saying that because if we're sacrificing work quality, efficiency, or services to our residents, it's pointless to talk about having the lowest tax rate. Why is staff, after hearing needs, critical needs across the departments over the last 3 days, why is staff suggesting to council to go to 4.18 for the sacrifice of $400K when we've got over $1 million worth of grant risk, right? We talked about lift stations, over $1 million worth of lift station work that we're gonna go for grants with, but we're not guaranteed. The COPS grant, to Commissioner Banks' point, we carry 25% of that liability. Granted, it's not gonna be in the budget officially, but we're on the hook for that should we get that grant, hopefully we do. Water maintenance, right? All their fleet, they talked about how it's all 12 years old. So that doesn't scream that there's sustainability plans there yet. So absent all that, I mean, we've got a tremendous amount of risk still from a funding perspective, just for the sake of saying that we lowered the millage to get 400,000. I mean, it basically works itself out to like $1 a month per homeowner on average. I mean,
Well,
that's not a selling point if we're lacking in critical needs services.
Well, and Commissioner, I guess let me kind of explain a couple points. So the water and wastewater side of the house that you're talking about, that has nothing to do with the millage rate. The millage rate can't help that, cannot affect that, cannot help that. It's an enterprise fund. It's set based on the utility rates. So when the utility rate study comes to you, it'll lay that out. It'll show all those needs and all that, and you'll set that utility rate to fund those needs. That will come at a later meeting because that's a different rate. So the millage rate only funds the services that you saw tonight. It does not fund the enterprise fund. Now, it can fund the streets fund because we've done that. As you know, we've raised the millage and put it over into the streets fund because the streets fund doesn't have the revenue that it needs. So the millage rate will only be for the services that you see before you tonight. And I will tell you, from staff standpoint, we've listened to every staff member, and we've given every staff member has pretty much received something out of this budget this year. Facilities is a significant place where we've had to put some funding. You know, it's a decision that we have to make to keep up with our facilities. That we had listened to the presentations from the police department. You know, we know that their response times are down, or they're having larger response times. We're hoping to get the grant to help us with that funding. If not, you're right, Commissioner Becker, we'll have to come back and fund that piece. We have reserves. There are enough reserves. That's why we have reserves, and it's comfortable to have those reserves because if we do come back in the COPS grant and we need another 200,000 or 50,000 or whatever it may be, we can call upon those reserves to make that to fill that gap or that to match those dollars. So that's the only thing is the millage rate that you're setting will fund these services. So if you're wanting to put more money in these services, then that millage rate will go to this
So yeah,
thing.
if I target my comments to general fund, okay, let's stay there, right? We've got concern in the rank and file around staffing levels in the fire department. We've got what I just described around the COPS grant for the police department. We've got a survey that we just did with our public around asset expansion at Northwest Rec. We just are approving Camp Weewa. So there's a lot of exposure that for the sake of just lowering our millage 1/10 of a mil to give $400,000 back to the taxpayers in aggregate, you know, there's a great demand for tennis court expansion, basketball court expansion, a whole bunch of stuff that we always, and then every year at budget workshops, it's, well, if we had the staff to do this, or if we had the funds to do this, and it's what our residents are wanting. I mean, again, going back to one of the people that I represent to say, hey, I got you $1 back in your pocket on a monthly basis. Oh, great, I guess, but I can't get those new tennis courts that you wanted, or I can't, you know, get Chief McKinley to his staffing levels. I don't want to have that conversation.
Well, I think you've heard from all the departments based on their service levels, and the service levels in the departments are very good. We have some very good service levels here in Apopka. There was talk, as you heard, from police department where their service level is taking a little impact, has had a little bit of impact based on positions and response times and things like that. You heard from the fire department, their response times, you know, and things are they're still running an awesome operation with their ISO 1. You heard that. So I don't see that we're sacrificing any of our service levels. We're putting money into facilities to help with that. Parks and Rec,
it's a difference of opinion. I
and
have
you're
a
right,
different-
and I'm just saying that I'm confident that this budget you have before you will continue your service levels and improve service levels in a lot of these areas, especially your police department. This will help. Keep in mind the improvements at Northwest Recreation Facility. We're talking millions of dollar improvements. Granted, you're right. We'll have to add staff, so we'll have to have dollars to add staff in the future. But the improvements that we're talking about, you won't be able to fund directly from your general fund. You have to figure out how we're going to fund those, either through a grant or through issuing debt to fund those improvements, because you know those fields and everything will cost millions of dollars.
Well, yeah, and Northwest
we'll have that, but
Northwest is a muscle memory go-to. It's the easiest one to call out.
Right.
But we have the old Apopka Little League fields that have sat dormant for years with no plan of action there. there's a lot of opportunity areas within the city that if we had $400,000, that could go a long way for something like that. So, I mean, there's things of need that could be satisfied using those funds. At the same time, keeping our tax rate very low for our residents.
And again, that is the decision of the council. We, the staff, have brought you everything, brought you all the needs of the departments. We've listened to everybody, brought you everything, showed you the service levels, showed you the improvements, showed you places where we can do better. Keep in mind, we did say, because we've hit some of our commercial, industrial, and some of our residential customers will see a hit from the municipal service tax. We've had a few calls, as I mentioned in previous meetings. We have a few people that are going to see, a little bit of an increase, small increases, but some are going to see some significant increases. On your larger commercial businesses will see an increase, a pretty substantial increase in their municipal service tax based on how much electricity, water, and gas that they use. So at that time, we had mentioned that if we could give a little bit back in a place, this is what we had talked about. This is really the only place where you can give it back. So that, Commissioner, that's the only that's why you see this. That's, we were looked at that because we had said that, we talked to and we knew we were going to hit some of those with some big increases, and so.
And that was my question for clarity along the same line. You're coming down the 0.1 mil to offset what they're going to be paying now through a different tax. So
Correct.
they're not paying lower. And aside from that, they'd have to pay the rollback rate to actually pay the same. So it's actually an increase.
It's right.
About
Correct,
an 8%
correct.
increase if we kept it the same.
If you're a
They're
homeowner, you're
actually
gonna
paying
pay
more.
If you're a homeowner, you're gonna pay 3% more.
Right.
Every house going up
Right.
3%. Homeowner, if you have homestead exemption, you're gonna pay 3% more. If you're not a homestead exemption household, you're gonna pay probably 10% more because of the market today. Industrial, commercial, 10% more this year. So what we're trying, the guys are getting hurt the worst, they're paying $1 million more. We're gonna try to give them some of that money back by reducing the ad valorem.
So to keep them where they were at, we'd have to go to the rollback rate.
Oh,
However, we've got all this uncertainty.
Yeah.
And that's what, we've got to give ourselves a buffer that if there's something we're missing and we don't realize it, we don't want to leave ourselves short. So that's where I came in leaning on that higher side because of all the uncertainty, because we're just hearing kind of all the different pieces tonight, not a chance to really put our brains together. So I came back ready to say, let's keep it as it is, but then I see, as was explained, the difference to the taxpayer, that's been shifted here, but it's not really a reduction because they're going to pay it over here. So I'm comfortable staying in that range because, again, I think we've got to give ourselves enough wiggle room to really think this through. And then once we can always, as you said, we can always come back down.
Right.
And we want to, in the sense of that, not to cut off services, but to keep it from cutting too deep. I think the other side is we're not all the way out of the woods with the effects of COVID. We're seeing all this stuff back and forth, and you've got a lot of people that have been living off of that paycheck but not gotten their work back in place. I think there's just that little bit of uncertainty. I'd rather save a little bit of extra skin there until we can really look at that. So
Yeah.
But
The only thing I'm just going to say is that, we just did all these budget workshops, and there's so many hanging, we still have to say, well, we need to fund this, we need to have money for here, and especially the police department. We don't know if they're going to give us 5, if they'll give us a grant for 5 or give us a grant for 10. That's a big expense. And if you roll back right now from what we currently are, we're just going to be back where we always are. We just barely make it. The level of service stays the same, yet we're still growing. We don't have the revenue of those new developments. We don't have that yet. So we're kind of relying on a revenue that isn't generating in our fund. So keeping it the same would just give us that small buffer for those.
Well, I think we have the buffer
we do
and
have
the money we've
reserves.
got, we've got the federal money, we got the $3.5 million that we've got in the bank.
Yeah,
We've
but
got-
we don't have it. We don't
we
have
do.
it. We're
we do.
relying on something we don't have.
We do have it.
You do have 3.5 of the 7, Commissioner. So the other night
But we
I,
don't even know how to spend it, because I'm always asking you, what can we spend it on?
Right, we're still waiting on some guidance on some of those dollars, you're right.
Okay.
We have it, we have used $1 million of it into resurfacing.
So, I
But-
mean,
We're pretty sure that
We're pretty sure we
it
can use
for
the
any general
3.5
revenue
on because we were
because-
short that in revenue
We
dollars,
can be
so.
pretty sure about a lot of things. I mean, we need guarantees of that money. I mean, we can sit here up and make projections, and have our points of view, but at the end of the day, it's required how we spend it. We can all, I mean, it's not money that we should count on yet. I mean, to place anywhere we want to, right?
But we do have a buffer in the fact that we have healthy reserve.
Correct.
And
You
that's
do have
where
that.
I just don't know, with the uncertainty, is that buffer enough to me, the bottom line for me, we have to fund those police officers. And I mean, I'm going to
I don't think
stick for
anybody
that. I
disagrees
think
with that.
everybody agrees
No,
with
I don't
that.
think-
And the municipal
So as
services
long as we
tax, you
can
can't
do
use
that,
that.
I just want to know that we can.
but
In general
I
fund,
just,
Yeah, you
why
can
are
use-
we
you can use
rolling
that.
back when we can leave it the same? You said in September, we can always go back.
Correct.
But we can't go forward. So if we roll back now and come September, we realize we don't have this grant, we have to fund, we have to match a higher percentage to get what we want. I mean, you're putting us at a disadvantage. Because then we're gonna be, okay, where are we gonna get this money from? So why can't we just leave the millage rate as is? Come September, we'll have a better picture of our finances and what we have. And then, you know what, in September, we can have that rollback.
And you can do that, Commissioner. You could absolutely do that.
Because you said, if we do the rollback right now, we can't go forward. And we're already at, what is it,
2876.
I mean, it's not a big difference. It's not like we're raising it. And I just feel that we should just leave it as is, wait until September, we have a better picture of our financial standing.
Mr. Smith?
I'm in favor of leaving it where it is, and if we need to in September, roll it back. I would like to see the position that the clerk asked for become a full-time position. And if I remember, fire did ask for some additional personnel, so let's look at what we can do for them as well. And so I'm in favor of leaving it where it is, and then after we look at those things, and if we can roll it back in September, then let's do that.
Right, we'll have a better picture of where we're at in September.
And I came in with the same mindset. The only thing added to that is that does mean there's a little bit more of an increase to that taxpayer right now. As long as they understand, this is just to give us room to make sure we're doing the best job for them. And we can bring it back, and I think we can, based upon this and where the reserves are, that we have enough to do these things, but I'm not sure on that. So having that buffer that we can parse all this out, and then we can say, okay, we can do this with what we have, then we can bring it back down, and that's a win all the way around. So I'm okay with that. I don't, yeah, I'm good.
You even said that we were in a really awkward position. We've got the budget, we've got the American Rescue Plan, we've got the state money, we still don't know how much we're getting. All is coming in at the same time. By leaving the millage rate as is, gives us, today's July, we have all of August, come September, I think we'll have a better picture of where we stand, of what is actually in our general fund.
I understand, I just want to remind everybody that come last March, go back a year in March, and COVID hits, we're 6 months into our budget, and we were able to balance a budget where we lost $3 million in 6 months.
But
$3
you
million.
recovered a lot of that with the CARES Act.
No,
No?
zero. So what I'm saying is, we've got a great team, and we understand how to manage our budgets. We understand where things are, how to manage it, and if tough times hit again. I just think that, we're in a situation where people are getting, ask your homeowner association, their water bill at Rock Springs Ridge. I guarantee you, they're gonna be paying another $100 a month for the municipal service tax for the water. That's fine. I think we worked hard as a team to put together a budget that will meet the needs of the residents, have a lot of funds available for grant opportunities as they come along, and still give our residents a slight decrease in property value, property taxes to offset their municipal service taxes increases. But
I just voted on something, Camp Weewa.
Yeah.
$4.7 million.
Right.
I think leaving the millage rate as is, just until September, that we have a better understanding of where we're at. We just did these 3 budget workshops, and we still I haven't really processed or digested everything that we have done here. I don't think it's enough time. I'm not for rolling back the millage rate right now. And since we have the opportunity in September to do so, I just think it's just fair. It's fair for us to have time to digest these 3 workshops. I mean, we just had one 2 hours ago. There's not enough time for me to even sit and say, okay, let me process this. So we're not increasing the millage rate. We've had this millage rate. So let's keep it, and we have time.
Well, and as you said, Commissioner Becker said, you're not voting on the budget tonight. You're not
No.
adopting a budget tonight. You're setting a millage rate.
Right,
So
that's all I'm
Keep
setting.
that in mind if that's, where you are. And like I said, it's hard to go up. You can go down.
I
But-
didn't make
but-
my opinion known. I want to keep it at 4.28. Because I would be tone deaf over the last 3 days, hearing from directors and the staff, on their staff, that have addressed me personally. Sorry if I enacted Siri on your phone. But, I don't, the verbatims that we've heard up on this dais in recent times is, we're doing things on the cheap, or we're rubbing nickels together to get things done. We're a town of 53,000 people. We have good demographics. We should be able to provide the services to our citizens, and we have a low tax rate. I mean, I don't know what we're arguing about here. Nothing in the budget presentations that I saw the past 3 days put any sort of sustainability plan to the fleet. Yeah, we've replaced some, but like I said, I'll harken back, and I get it, it's not your millage rate, but there's areas across our department that we don't have the fleet sustainability in place yet. We don't have employee sustainability in place, marching to certain staffing levels that we want to see as a city, knowing what we're growing to in the very immediate future. So, I fully support keeping it where it's at.
We are adding 10 employees net.
You're adding 12 right now
12
without
net.
the COPS grant.
And
correct?
then, as Commissioner Smith said, I agree, these others that we've heard about today, I would like to see those added in. So again, just having the time to know that will all pan out, I'd like to see it go down. I'll make that known, but I want to make sure that we can get there.
Well, and the commissioners, let me point this out while we're here too. Going back, or setting at the current millage rate will give you an additional $400,000. So keep in mind, is that $400,000 enough, or is that where you want to be when we get to September? Because it's hard to go up, but we can go down.
Again, with the level of reserves that are there, I have figured that we're going to dip into those to make this happen. And I'm comfortable with that as long as they don't go too low, because we are in storm season and we do have the uncertainties.
Right, and so,
But I think we got room there.
Right.
It's just, I can't, in good conscience, say, I've got my mind completely wrapped around this, and I know it can be done with this for the level of service. That being said, I think you've done a tremendous job. This year, it's felt like everybody has been able to say, you know what, I'm beginning to see a lot of what I'd like. And as I asked you, if everybody got everything they asked for, we'd have to come up with another $10 million. We're always going to have the want list, but are we suffering in our services? We're making headway. We have cut down we knocked out the loan just to get vehicles, which we shouldn't have been in back then. Now we are in a place where we're starting to replace those. Like I said, we're getting to that place where our numbers are getting dialed in, and I think it can be a consistent. But if it's consistently too low, then that's going to have to tick up. But if we're there, then we want to take the weight off the taxpayers. The only thing that I don't like is the fact that keeping it level, it's increasing it on the taxpayers, because they're also now going to be paying it over here. They're going to be paying that $400,000 already. So we're adding to that, plus not rolling it back to the rollback rate. They're already an increase right there. So we all know that, and we know that we'll pare that down, I believe, over this next month. And so I think that's really what everybody's saying, if I'm hearing right, that we just want the room to be able to deal with that in a safe manner, so we can come out with something that's great level of service and not in the poorhouse.
Okay, is that for a motion to approve and set the proposed millage rate of 4.2876 by Commissioner Bankson?
All motion? Or are you,
Yeah, you just made it.
did you make a motion? I'll second.
Got a motion by Commissioner Bankson, second by Commissioner Becker. All those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries unanimously.
Mayor, can you do one more thing? Can you also set the tentative budget hearing date for September the 8th at 5:15?
Okay, so we need to set the date
Ten-
for
the
the
tentative.
final tentative budget on September 8th. Motion by,
So moved.
got by Commissioner Smith, second by Commissioner Becker. All those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries unanimously. Okay. Next up. Edward, are you going to present, or you want the designate?
This is item 2 for the delegate?
I don't, we don't really,
I was looking for the next agenda item, Rob. The next agenda item. There you go.
there we go.
So Commissioners, as you know, every year, the Florida League of Cities has their annual conference, and I think all of you are planning to attend. We are required to designate an official voting delegate that will represent the city of Apopka at this conference. So we just need a motion to elect someone to serve as this delegate.
I would make a motion to have Commissioner Smith do that again.
Got a motion by Commissioner Bankson to
Second.
nominate Commissioner Smith. Got a second by Commissioner Velasquez. All those in favor?
Aye.
We just
All right.
gave him
All
a job.
opposed? You
Is there a
are,
nay from Commissioner Smith?
boom. So in the mayor's report, we'll go over the items on their list, make sure we're all good with those. And that'll be our position. Okay, next up, major development, Apopka 429. Bobby.
Thank you. Good evening. Bobby Howell, Planning Manager. The applicant is requesting approval of a major development plan for a piece of property that's located southwest of US 441 and west of the Apopka Airport. And the major development plan details the development of infrastructure servicing an industrial warehouse development totaling 2,471,000 square feet on 246.8 acres. The location map of the property is there. The major development plan is only for infrastructure. It's not for the buildings that are depicted on the major development plan. Internal roadway is proposed for construction leading from Orange Circle, which is by the airport here, going northward and up to Wesley Road and ultimately terminating at 441. The intersection of Wesley Road and 441 is proposed to be a signalized intersection at full project build-out. Additional on-site improvements include extending the existing northbound left turn lane on US 441, 460 feet, and extending the existing southbound right turn lane located on US 441, 430 feet. Right and left turn lanes leading onto US 441 from Wesley Road are proposed for construction and final build-out. Stormwater is proposed for discharge into 5 ponds that are located throughout the site. The Development Review Committee recommends approval. The Planning Commission unanimously recommends approval, and the recommended motion tonight is to approve the Apopka 429 Major Development Plan. Staff and the applicant are available for questions.
Any questions for Bobby? Okay, anybody from the public wish to speak on this matter? Not, we'll close the public hearing, look for a motion to approve the major development plan for Apopka 429.
So moved.
And one question, sorry, I just kind of, and I would have maybe thought Commissioner Bankson might ask the question. It may just be academic, but I'm assuming all airport, considerations, height requirements, all that sort of stuff has been considered and passed, approved.
Yes, Commissioner, that was all detailed in the Rate Plan Development Master Plan.
Okay,
Yeah, I already knew that. That's why I didn't ask
okay,
it.
gotcha.
As a pilot,
Just
that
a
was important.
final check.
Okay, so.
Yeah, so
motion
moved.
approved, Commissioner Bankson, second by
Second.
Commissioner Smith. All those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries unanimously. Next up, ordinance number 2838.
An ordinance of the City of Apopka, Florida, amending the future land use element of the Apopka Comprehensive Plan of the City of Apopka, changing the future land use designation from county rural to mixed use for certain real property generally located on the southwest corner of Sadler Road and Golden Gem Road, owned by Carl C. and Donna S. Redder, comprising 1.79 acres more or less, providing for severability and for an effective date.
Thank you. There are no changes to the ordinance. I just wanted to give an update as regards to, we've reached out to Orange County Public Schools. I spoke with Christopher Mills, who's the facilities planning administrator there. He's indicated to us that school board is looking to do a workshop for elected officials in regards to capacity and concurrency, and to give some explanations to that. But there are no changes to the ordinance tonight.
And I think you've also put together, I think maybe by next commission meeting, have some of the plans for us to look at, or as far as the schools and the under capacity, or have you already sent that out?
I've sent that to the
Oh,
commission.
okay, so everybody's
yes.
got that? Okay, all right,
You
good.
did,
Yeah,
yeah,
it's-
that's the package
Good.
that we've got.
So I
And
would like
it's
to thank you for
online.
that, yeah. Because, we, had, like I said in the last meeting on this topic, and this kind of leads into the rest of the hearing, but we had received the preliminary data from school board member Byrd about a month or month and a half ago, and she had provided a list of all the current OCPS schools that were over capacity and what the permanent capacity was, what their current enrollment was, and then their percentage. And so, not that anybody would prefer it, but obviously OCPS waits until a certain overcapacity to start planning, capital planning, that sort of thing. And so you provided the list of all of the developments that have kind of capacity reservations from the beginning of this year. Obviously, we don't have the full picture, but it gave a directional view. And so even with that capacity, combined with the notations that board member Byrd put in her remarks. So for example, like Wolf Lake Elementary or Apopka High had the highest number of encumbered or reservations based off of our activity within those 2021 listing. And that, even with those additional, it puts that school at 111% over capacity. So it's right on that mark. And so it feels like it's in the right kind of flex zone, if you want to put it that way. And then combined too, because I know Mr. Olson's in the room, and he's a great advocate for schools and diminishing the use of portables. But in that same data packet that Ms. Byrd was able to provide to us since 2016, there has been an 18% decrease in portable use. The last 2 years, it's been a 5% decline year over year. So I think, those two combined, obviously our remarks in the last hearing around school concurrency, making sure that developers are paying concurrency for that ultimate impact. And then really the last part there is making sure that we as a board advocate to our school board member and the board to make sure that those funds don't get allocated elsewhere, right? We make sure that those funds stay here in Apopka. So, but thank you for providing that.
I know Bobby ran some numbers. Did he give you the numbers as far as what we paid into school impact fees? I know he's working, we had for the last 3 years, but we'd like to go back to when the last school was built, which was Wolf Lake. Is it middle or elementary, or the same year?
About the same time.
Yes, Mayor, I was able to obtain those impact fees that were sent from the city to the county school board. I got that from the finance department. From the years 2019, 2020, and 2021, we sent $10,944,832.68.
10
then-
million.
Just 2.5 years.
Yes, in 2.5
Wow.
years.
And then
almost
what was the
11
cost for the K-8? I think was it $30 million?
It is, according to Christopher Mills' information he sent me, the cost was $28,521,195.78.
So that gives you, and what we're gonna ask him to do is go back to when Wolf Lake Elementary and Middle were built, and then pull forward, just to kind of give us a, are we on track with the money we're sending them? Are we getting our schools
share.
back? Yeah. So Bobby's gonna work on trying to go a little farther back, just so we got a little better handle on that number. Thank you, Bobby.
Thank you, yes.
Okay, anybody from the public wish to speak on this matter? If not, we'll close the public hearing and look for a motion to approve ordinance number 2838.
So moved.
Got a motion by Commissioner Smith,
Second.
second by Commissioner Velasquez. All those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Next up, ordinance number 2839.
Ordinance number 2839, an ordinance of the City of Apopka, Florida, amending the future land use element of the Apopka Comprehensive Plan of the City of Apopka, changing the future land use designation from county rural to mixed use for certain real property generally located on the southwest corner of Sadler Road and Golden Gem Road, owned by Carl C. and Donna S. Redder, comprising 8.62 acres more or less, providing for severability and for an effective date.
All right, Bobby, any changes? No changes? Anybody from the public wish to speak on this matter? If not, we'll close the public hearing and look for a motion to approve ordinance number 2839.
So
So
moved.
moved.
Got a motion by Commissioner Bankson, second by Commissioner Velasquez. All those in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Next up, ordinance number 2840.
Okay?
Mayor, and Commissioners, the applicant has requested continue the second reading to a date certain of August 18th to allow additional time to work out issues related to the development agreement.
Okay. Anybody want to speak on this matter before we close the public hearing? Okay, if not, I'll look for a motion to a date certain of August 18th, 2021 to allow additional time for the development agreement.
So moved.
Got a motion by Commissioner Smith, second by Commissioner Bankson. All those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries unanimously. Next up, ordinance number 2841.
Okay, ordinance number 2841, an ordinance of the City of Apopka, Florida, changing the zoning from T Transitional District to Kelly Park Interchange District, Mixed Use KPIMU, and assigning a neighborhood overlay district for certain real property generally located east of State Road 429 and west of Plymouth Sorrento Road, owned by the Klepsig Family Trust, Klepsig Dennis R. Life Estate, and Klepsig Joanne Life Estate, comprising 50.79 acres, providing for directions to the Community Development Director, severability, conflicts, and an effective date.
Bobby, any changes? Okay. Anybody from the public wish to speak on this matter? Not, we'll close the public hearing, look for a motion to adopt ordinance number 2841.
So moved.
Got a motion by Commissioner Bankson, second by Commissioner Velasquez. All those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries unanimously. Next up, ordinance number 2845.
Ordinance number 2845, an ordinance of the City of Apopka, Florida, changing the zoning from agricultural district to Kelly Park Interchange District, mixed use, MU KPI, and assigning a Kelly Park Crossing Neighborhood Overlay District for certain real property located south of West Kelly Park Road and east of Round Lake Road, comprising 39.6 acres more or less, and owned by Kent A. Greer and Annie M. Greer, providing for directions to the Community Development Director, severability, conflicts, and an effective date.
Okay. Any changes, Bobby? No changes? Okay. Anybody from the public wish to speak on this matter? Not, we'll close the public hearing, look for motion to adopt ordinance number 2845.
So
So
moved.
Got a
moved.
motion by Commissioner Smith, second by Commissioner Velasquez.
Oh, my
All
God.
those in favor? Aye. All opposed, motion carries unanimously. Next up, ordinance number 2848.
Okay, ordinance number 2848. An ordinance of the City of Apopka, Florida, to extend its territorial and municipal limits to annex pursuant to Florida Statute 171.044, the hereinafter described lands situated and being in Orange County, Florida, owned by Bert E. Roper and Barbara C. Roper Family Limited Liability Limited Partnership, located west of State Road 429 and north of Hooper Farms Road, providing for directions to the city clerk, severability, conflicts, and an effective date.
Bobby, any changes? Okay, anybody from the public wish to speak on this matter? Not, we'll close the public hearing, look for a motion to adopt ordinance number 2848.
So moved.
Got a motion by Commissioner Smith,
Second.
second by Commissioner Becker. All those in favor? Aye. All opposed, motion carries unanimously. Next up, ordinance number 2850.
Ordinance number 2850, an ordinance of the City of Apopka, Florida, amending the future land use element of the Apopka Comprehensive Plan of the City of Apopka, changing the future land use designation from county rural to to mixed use for certain real property generally located on the southwest corner of Sadler Road and Golden Gem Road, owned by PMDW Ventures, comprising 9.86 acres more or less, providing for severability and for an effective date.
Any changes, Bobby? Anybody from public wish to speak on this matter? Not, we'll close the public hearing. Look for a motion to adopt ordinance number 2850.
So moved.
Got a motion by Commissioner Becker,
So,
second by
You
Commissioner
know, I was going to
Velasquez.
say so moved.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, motion carries unanimously. Next up, ordinance number 2852.
Ordinance number 2852, an ordinance of the City of Apopka, Florida, to extend its territorial and municipal limits to annex pursuant to the Florida Statute 171.044, the hereinafter described land situated and being in Orange County, Florida, owned by the City of Apopka, located west of Hawthorne Avenue and south of Ocoee-Apopka Road, providing for directions to the city clerk, severability, conflicts, and an effective date.
Okay, any changes? Okay, anybody from public wish to speak on this matter? Not, we'll close the public hearing. Look for a motion to adopt ordinance number 2852.
So moved.
Got a motion by Commissioner Smith.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Bankson. All those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Next up, ordinance number 2858.
Ordinance number 2858, an ordinance of the City of Apopka, Florida, changing the zoning from RSF 1A Residential Single Family Estate, CC Community Commercial, and MUESGT Mixed Use East Shore Gateway District to PD Planned Development for certain real property generally located north and south of Boy Scout Road, west of State Road 451, and east of Binion Road, owned by Troy S. Bronson Family LP, John and Donna Marie Kirkland, Binion Partners LLC, and Apopka Centerline Development LLC, comprising of 366.6 acres, providing for directions to the Community Development Director, severability and conflicts, and an effective date.
Bobby?
Just a point of clarification, on the master plan, the unit size of the minimum unit size for the townhomes is 1,350 square feet. The staff report said that the minimum unit size was 1,800 square feet. 1,800 square feet is for the townhome pad itself, but the minimum unit size is 1,350 square feet, and that's in the master plan that was presented at first reading. Other than that, there are no changes.
Any questions for Bobby? Okay. Anybody from the public wish to speak on this matter? Sure, come on. Your name and address for the record, please, sir.
My name's Dion Ross. My address is 664 Longford Loop, and that's in Apopka. I'm actually the HOA president for Breckenridge, and one of my concerns with this project is the major impact that it's going to cause on our entrance. Anybody that travels Boy Scout knows that at our call box, we only have a two-car stacking. Anytime it delays and around 5 o'clock, we have cars lining up in the street. I mean, I don't know if there's anything that can be,
We had discussed that the last meeting. Now, I forget what the conversation was, but it sounded like there was some opportunities there.
Aren't we having that road improved?
Yeah, there'll be improvements to that road, major improvements to that road, and I think Pam spoke to that, but I think the applicant can speak to that.
Applicant, can y'all answer that question, maybe? Name and address for the record.
Erica Hughes, VHB, 225 East Robinson, Orlando, Florida, 32801. And that is correct. As part of our PD agreement, there is an extensive transportation improvement plan that we are dedicated to. That includes improvements along Boy Scout Road. We've actually been in contact with Breckenridge. We've sent them our plans and try to keep them in the loop with everything. So we understand the sensitivity to that entrance area, and we obviously don't want to cause additional impacts to the existing residents. So we are covering that, and we should be able to work through that.
Good. And you might want to keep Pam Richmond in your, if you want to contact her at the city, and just keep in contact with her. She's kind of the road guru around here. So she could help you, as they navigate it, keep you informed.
okay, I mean,
So-
and my biggest concern is we have one way in and one way out.
Correct. So it's prichmond@apopka.net.
All right,
You got it. Thank you, sir. Appreciate you coming down. Okay, anybody from the public wish to speak on this matter? Come on down, Rod Olson. Man, it's late in the day for you to get up.
Rod Olson, 3156 Rolling Hills Lane. Just a comment, I didn't want to hit on all of them, but this one, this is an additional 400 to 500 kids. And again, we have taken the short end, and I'll have an update for all of you, a short end of these portables. They opened Wolf Lake and middle and elementary school 15 years ago now with 46 portables. We still have 46 portables. Yes, relief's coming down the street, but we keep adding and keep adding. This is 400 to 500 students, depending upon the breakout that we got from Orange County. Thank you.
Thanks, Rod. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, on that point, because obviously it had a certain land use prior, but on the staff report, we're saying it's 4, almost 5 at the elementary school level and 3 at the high school level. But yeah, I mean, it doesn't diminish what he's saying. I mean, obviously that's again, it's incumbent upon us to go and work with OCPS board to make sure that capital planning is there.
Well, also remember that in Ms. Bird's comments to us that Apopka High School still has the 9th grade center that's available that they could use for overflow. So that was part of their reasoning that as we looked at overcrowding.
And then I can appreciate that this development didn't go for the increased in density. I know that this in a geographic area could have gone up to 25. So I'm appreciative that we stuck at the 15 dwelling units in the multifamily. So I appreciate that.
Okay, anybody else? All right, if not, look for a motion to adopt ordinance number 2858.
So moved.
Got a motion by Commissioner Becker,
Second.
second by Commissioner Velasquez. All those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries unanimously. Next up, ordinance number 2860.
Ordinance 2860, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Apopka, Florida, amending the Code of Ordinances of the City of Apopka by amending Chapter 38, Environment, Article 2, Nuisance Abatement, Division 5, Registration, Maintenance, and Security of Abandoned Real Property, providing for codification, providing for severability, providing for conflicts, and setting an effective date.
Michael, any changes?
No changes.
Okay, anybody from the public wish to speak on this matter? Not, we'll close the public hearing. Look for a motion to adopt ordinance number 2860.
So moved.
Got a motion by Commissioner Bankson.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Smith. All those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries unanimously. Next up, ordinance number 2861.
Ordinance number 2861, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Apopka, Florida, amending the Code of Ordinances by the City of Apopka by creating Chapter 18, Building and Building Regulations, Article 2, Building Code, Sections 18 through 23, local supplement to the Florida Building Code, providing for severability, providing for conflicting ordinances, and providing for an effective date.
Richard Earp.
Good afternoon, City Council, Mayor. These are requirements, the specific requirements directly from FEMA through the folks that FEMA has here in the state. This is nothing the city came up with. This was minimum requirements dictated by FEMA. There'll also be another ordinance to request adoption of changes to the Land Development Code at the next City Council meeting, and those are also, it's nothing creative staff came up with, it's directly required by FEMA.
All right, any questions for Richard? Anybody from the public wish to speak on this matter? Not, we'll close the public hearing and look for a motion to approve ordinance number 2861 at first reading and hold over for second reading and adoption.
Okay.
So moved.
Got a motion by Commissioner Becker,
Second.
second by Commissioner Smith. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, motion carries unanimously. Okay, next up, Resolution 2021-32.
Resolution number 2021-32, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Apopka, Florida, amending the budget for the fiscal year beginning October 1, 2020, and ending September 30th, 2021, providing for a budget amendment.
Vladimir Ortega, Finance Director. Budget Resolution 2021-32 has 4 different amendments. The first one is a budget amendment, includes changes in funding appropriations related to Duke Energy, public service tax revenue. On April 21, 2021, the City Council approved appropriations via settlement with Duke Energy for public service tax revenue. This amendment recognizes the revenue received for Duke Energy and assigns expenditure funds for the Recreation Department for the amphitheater, bathroom concession, Frank Carlton Storage Building, and Birding Park improvements. And the remaining of these funds is to be expended shall be recognized via future adopted budgets or budget amendments that will be presented to the council. So you have $2,035 million reserved for contingency or future projects. The second amendment is the amendment includes changes in funding and appropriations in regard to the airport fuel sales revenue and the airport expenditures. And the fuel costs exceeded the budget amount due to the airport fuel activity for the month of May and 3 days for the month of June. And these funds are replenished with the revenue received for fuel sales. The final sale of the airport is currently pending with First Landing Aviation, and that is a total of $33,950. The third budget amendment, it's in funding and appropriations related to the San John River Water Management District, Florida Spring Grant Program for the Distributed Sewer Retroi Project. And this one was on April 7, 2021. The City Council authorized the assignment of funds for the distributed sewer retrofit project in the amount of $185,835. And these amendments just recognize the revenue to be received from the owners of each project location in order to pay for their maintenance fees for each distributed sewer retroi system. And the monthly maintenance fee is approximately $36 per month. The last one is the budget amendment that Mr. Bass was talking about, and this is the fundings and appropriations related to the American Rescue Plan for the Coronavirus State and Local Fiscal Recovery Fund. The city of Apopka was awarded a total of $7,037,307 to provide resources to meet pandemic response needs. Some of the categories for eligible uses include support for public health expenditure, addressing negative economic impacts caused by the public health emergency, and replacing lost public sector revenue, provide premium pay for essential workers, and investing in the water, sewer, and broadband infrastructure. We have received right now $3,518,653.50 received on July 12, 2021 via wire. So we got that money already. And the funds to be expended shall be recognized via future adopted budget or budget amendments once we have more information about these funds. And this is the total for the Budget Resolution 2021-32.
So we haven't used any of this American,
We talked in our budget workshops about $1 million of that. So of that 3.5, we've taken $1 million that we're dedicating to road resurfacing.
okay.
That's
So the rest of
the
what's left
2.5.
over, it will be either workshopped or we can? Yes. Okay.
Correct. Once we get all the information, it'll come back to you so that you can, once you have all the information of where we can spend it and how we can spend it all, then we'll bring that back to you.
Okay.
It is in a separate fund by this as well, Commissioners. We want to keep it separate. We didn't want to put it in our general fund. We talked to our auditor, and so this was where we, after consulting with them, we decided we'll keep it all in the grants fund, so you'll see it in the separate fund. And as we use it or you direct it, it'll go to the fund that it needs to go to.
Okay, that makes sense.
Anybody else?
I have one question in reference to the buildings at the Frank Carlton Center. I thought we was building one at the Frank Carlton, but also was going to build a separate building for cemetery at the cemetery.
No, Commissioner, the cemetery, they use Frank Carlton, they come to Frank Carlton, that's where they come for the, because we don't have an air-conditioned facility or whatever. And the cemetery is right by the dog park, the cemetery, and then Frank Carlton, they kind of all connect together.
Mm-hmm.
They leave their vehicles and everything currently at Frank Carlton. So we're gonna build a storage unit for Frank Carlton and for them to keep all their stuff as well, because that's where they keep everything now, and then they go to the cemetery. We didn't have plans to build a facility at the cemetery as well.
All right.
Mr. Becker? think, good. Okay. All right. Anybody from the public wish to speak on this matter? Not, we'll close the public hearing. Look for a motion to approve Resolution 2021-32.
So moved.
So
Got a motion by
moved.
Commissioner Bankson, second by Commissioner Velasquez. All those in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Next up, city council reports. Commissioner Velasquez.
Nothing to report right now.
Okay. Commissioner
Yeah, it's been a long 3 days, but thank you to, again, all of my colleagues. I think our hearts are really in this.
Yes.
Thank you to the city. I know to all of our staff, and especially over these last couple of years and everything that's been faced. I know everybody's worked hard, sharpened pencils, and I believe by the end of this month, we'll come up with something that's going to be real workable for everybody and for our taxpaying public as well.
There you go. Commissioner Smith.
I have a plaque for the Apopka Police Department. I left it in my car. I think it was 2 weeks ago now, the Apopka Police Department provided police protection for a kidney walk that was held from a location on 441 all the way down to Central. And the two officers that escorted those walkers was very cooperative, and so they wanted to show their appreciation. And so I have a plaque for the Apopka Police Department, and they really, really appreciate the efforts that were put forth. And a couple of them said, "Oh, we have real police."
Commissioner Becker.
I've talked enough tonight. I know that we've still got some agenda items, so I'm good.
Okay. All right. Edward, anything under your?
Nope, I think I've talked enough tonight as well.
All right.
Yeah, that's how I feel.
All right. Michael, you're up.
All right, good evening. You haven't heard from me yet tonight, so it's my turn. All right, I've got two items, part of my report. The first item is in relation to the subject that was brought at previous council meetings, which is a desire to regulate what are known as professionally small box discount stores, or colloquially dollar stores. One of the Community Development Department, as well as the City Attorney's Office, has begun to do initial research as to the avenues that the city has for regulation of this type of a use. As we move forward to propose changes to the Land Development Code and our code to address this matter, I believe it is best that the council have a motion to authorize staff to begin the process, but in that, authorize staff to bring forward a moratorium ordinance. Statutorily, what a moratorium ordinance will do is it will freeze any it will stop applications for such a use to be presented to the city for approval for a fixed time. We can propose a moratorium of 6 months. During that moratorium, there will be no applications for building permits for uses, no applications for site plans, no applications for zoning changes, and no applications for land use amendments that will be accepted by the city, while the city conducts a study for the proper regulation of the use within its jurisdiction. So at this point, I ask for the council to present a motion authorizing staff to begin the proceedings to implement a moratorium ordinance.
So,
Wait a minute. So you'd have to bring it back to council.
I will be bringing back an ordinance. There's no advertised ordinance because we haven't begun the advertisement. But I think the first step is best that the council authorize staff to begin the proceedings. Once you've authorized me to begin, at the next council meeting, we will be presenting the moratorium ordinance for first reading.
Can I
So let
just,
me get this straight, though. So if somebody were to come up next week or something. and-
Yeah, there would not be an ordinance.
Correct. Okay,
Correct.
moratorium would go into effect when we meet,
adopt
and
the
it's
ordinance.
a business item, not a
Correct.
legal, okay, that's, okay.
I know that we're talking small box discount stores, and everyone thinks of dollar stores, but are we affecting another business that may be under that umbrella? Because I
No.
don't want to punish another business owner because we don't want a dollar store.
Now, as part of our initial research, at least I looked into similar ordinances that have been passed regionally. And two of the most best examples are the city of Plum Coast, just north of us in Flagler County. They had an ordinance, they proposed a moratorium they had a specific definition for small box, and we will probably emulate that definition, which it sets it at, I think it's 15,000 square feet is the minimum square footage, and that it sells a variety of items, and that is, there's a certain percentage, below a certain percentage of shelf space that's dedicated to fresh foods. The definition specifically excludes pharmacies, so CVS does not count as a small box discount store. It also excludes convenience stores that are attached to gas stations. Those are specifically excluded. So the definition is drafted in such a way that it really does cover a specific type of use. And a lot of these moratoriums, at least nationwide, also go to address the issue of food deserts. And we have conducted initial research. There is actually a site by the USDA which defines food deserts. And in our preliminary research, the area of downtown Apopka is actually considered a food desert. Most of South Apopka, downtown, through west to about where 441 and Cimarron Split is actually deemed a food desert. So those are things that the city and staff will take into account when looking to amend the land development code.
Yeah, because I just, I know we're not crazy about the dollar stores, but I don't want to hurt another small business person who's coming in to open up a business. And
No,
say-
it's specifically
Okay,
defined.
That's my concern. So I mean, I understand this, but I just want to make sure we cover all our bases.
So now under that definition, would like the $5 under, well, I don't even know what it's
Five
called.
below.
Five below, depending on
below?
its square footage,
It would,
it may fall.
But then again, I mean, and my daughters love Five Below, but Five Belows don't kind of congregate, this other small box retailers tend to concentrate near each other,
Right, and those are things we would look into working with community development. We would
Right.
look at spacing requirements, zoning districts. Those are the mechanisms that could be done under the land development code for regulating, aside from simply just outright banning them within a jurisdiction. There are regulations that we can consider, but
Buffer
that-
zones, things like that.
Right, but that would allow, the moratorium would allow us to consider all of those while not having to tackle a rush of applications coming in while we look at changing the code.
Okay.
And there's urgency there. I mean, we just had another one show that they're going into a vacant, I think where Royal
A
Pets
storefront,
used to
yeah.
be. So, I mean, it's pressing. We need to get this done, so.
So what do you need from us?
It's just a motion authorizing staff to begin
Okay.
proceedings towards drafting a moratorium.
So I'll make the motion.
got a motion by Commissioner Smith, second by Commissioner Velasquez. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, motion carries unanimously.
The second item on my agenda is I've distributed to all of you the 2021 Florida Legislative Bill Summary. These are mainly the bills that specifically address issues of concern to the city or directly impact the city. Earlier this year, I presented to you a list of those bills that we were monitoring. Not all of those bills were adopted by the legislature or signed by the governor, but these are the ones that have been adopted, are effective. There's a few that are still not effective. I think there's one that still is lagging, and that is the impact fee ordinance. That doesn't have an effective date till October of this year. Just to kind of gloss over those that right now off the top of my head, I do recall that have a specific impact, and some that you're going to see fairly soon. One of the most clear ones is the Growth Management Act has been amended. Small-scale comprehensive plan amendments are now, the threshold is no longer 10 acres, it's now 50 acres. Therefore, there will be fewer comp plan amendments that will go through the dual process of state review and coming back. So you'll be now processing, and the staff will be processing small-scale comp plan amendments at 50 acres instead of 10 acres. There are, again, one of the more important ones also now that the state has stepped in and decided to regulate how local governments can adopt their impact fees and increases to impact fees. We'll be taking a look at those now. Basically, the state has capped that we cannot increase impact fees by more than 25%. If the city intends to go between 25 and 50%, there are certain regulations that'll take effect. And if they intend to go above that amount, increase of an impact fee above that amount, there's special considerations. Special studies have to be conducted to show that you have a need for that increase, and there have to be 2 public hearings in order to approve an increase of that amount. Other changes that have been implemented by this legislature, or I like to, not to get too personal, but I think this is a legislature that continues to erode home rule for local governments, and I think it's fairly stated. I'm not the only local government attorney who's concerned about the erosion of home rule that this legislature has stepped in. One of the other changes to the Growth Management Act that can potentially affect and will come before you is now plan development and development agreements can be amended without the consent of all property owners that are covered by the development agreement. Therefore,
Okay.
one property owner can now amend a development agreement without the
But
consent
does
of the
that
other owners.
include the ones that we already have?
Yes,
No.
yes. The legislature has now adopted that change to 163.
What happened to them when they go up to Tallahassee? Weren't they all local elected officials?
I'm your counsel, and I'm going to keep my personal opinions
What happened? to
silent as to what I sometimes believe. The other one that is of concern, and it's been and this is one I am following it because it is this bill is currently subject to federal litigation, and it's HB1, which is the public disorder bill. While there are the issues that are in the news and there are of concern, there is one provision in HB1 that is of concern to the city, and that is that if a property owner suffers property damage during a disturbance, and that property owner believes that the city did not adequately respond to the disturbance, the property owner may file an action against the city. What is most concerning is that the state has waived the sovereign immunity. Therefore, there is no cap on what the city is financially liable to a property owner. The problem is that the reasonable response, or the language I quoted in the summary, was not defined by the legislature. So you can have cities that can be embroiled in litigation and arguing that the response of their local law enforcement was reasonable to the matter at hand, whereas a property owner can say, well, this riot got out of hand, I don't believe the city acted properly, therefore I'm going to sue. And what would most likely happen is, in an event, a property owner is going to go after the deep pockets, and with sovereign immunity removed from local governments, the deep pockets happen to be us. And that's of a pretty chilling concern, the overarching aspects of this bill, not even going into the First Amendment concerns, or as well as the potential discretionary view of local law enforcement. And we kind of saw it play last week in Miami-Dade County, what constitutes whereas it's really up to the discretion of local law enforcement as to whether an actor enforced the law. And those are some concerns. But that one was one that was most alarming for local governments, is the potential of severe financial liability and that waiver of sovereign immunity. The other changes that have been brought in, in regards to...
Can I ask you something?
Sure.
Does the city have the right to go out and how do they cover themselves with a different insurance policy? How do they deal with that?
It's not clear. I haven't gotten it how the Florida League of Cities is going to respond to this, and I'm going to try to follow the federal litigation. It's currently pending in this action, but I don't believe they might not have touched onto this concern of this issue of sovereign immunity. And that was one thing that the bill analysis actually had concerns over, the fact that this would have a negative financial impact on local governments due to the potential of either large damages or embroiled in litigation to defend what would be considered appropriate response to a disturbance.
Okay.
Other changes, the building departments now, the legislature has tried to encourage more electronic submission for permit applications, as well as responses, and trying to more streamline and electronically have the permitting process. Last one just to touch on is again, in the issue of preemption and erosion of home rule, the legislature has now deemed that the regulation of home businesses falls within the purview of the state, and local governments cannot do anything to prohibit folks from having home businesses. While the city doesn't have such an enforcement here, but in regards to, some folks have now interpreted the statute to state that the cities can no longer regulate home businesses at all. The statute does provide that the cities can no longer create a category for home businesses. They have to treat home businesses the same as regular businesses. And then those regulations apply. The city is still authorized to regulate parking, say. If you've got a single-family home, you're not allowed to have a business where you're going to have folks come to your home and park at your home and bring customers. Those regulations still exist. But the regulation of home businesses has now been preempted to the state, among other regulations that the state has now preempted to themselves. Those are among some of the bills that I recall, and I'd like to just stress at least the erosion of home rule, which is of concern, and it's been an ever-growing concern. Each year, this legislature really does enact new bills that further erode the local home rule. There were other restrictions to home rule that did not specifically affect us, but that is a current trend with the legislature.
The one bill that passed in reference to code enforcement, you can no longer call it
sorry,
anonymous.
thank you for bringing that. Yes, I'm sorry, that was one of major concern. Legislature has amended Chapter 162 to now prohibit anonymous complaints of code enforcement violations. So now if someone is to report a code enforcement violation, they have to give their name and address. So the bill analysis took into consideration that may have an impact, perhaps even a fiscal impact on local governments, in that they're either going to have to change their enforcement mechanism, either there's going to be less prosecution, or what could in turn become is that code enforcement could become less complaint-driven, and now perhaps there'll be now more sweeps in neighborhoods where the officers will go out and look and spot violations and not have them initiated by individuals.
That's
So is the
the
code
reason
of-
we have Commissioner Smith as our
Complainant.
voting member.
So if the code enforcement officer responds to a complaint and the person did give their name and address, does the code enforcement officer have to divulge that information?
If we create a record that the officer is responding to a complaint, that complainant has to provide the name. And I'm trying to remember now, if in the summary, the officer is not allowed to investigate if they don't have the person's name and address, so they cannot be record. Now, that's why I think the shift is either there's going to be less enforcement, or now we have neighborhood sweeps. Would be that if the testimony from the officer is, I was conducting a neighborhood sweep and located these violations, and that would be what the record would show. But to my knowledge, any complaint received, and we have to take, these are all recorded, such a complaint, then we would not, I believe that the complainant has to now leave their identifying information. I do not believe that if they do not leave the identifying information, then at that point, I think it could be a defense on the part of the respondent to state, well, what drove you out there? Was there a complaint given? It's not an area where we want to be stuck in, where we're basically going on anonymous complaints, yet not filing them as records. I would advise against that. I don't want to skirt both the public records laws or the changes to 162.
It's so strange. I mean, like, throw code enforcement out the window. If I witness a crime, can I not call the police department anonymously and say, hey, there's a crime taking place? I mean, not to say that code enforcement is a crime, but the same general logic of saying, hey, I have fear of retribution. If I make a complaint against somebody, they may retaliate against me. The anonymity seems like it's protection to the person. Like, if a code enforcement is happening, it's happening. If a crime is happening, it's happening, regardless of whether or not I tell you my name or not. It's just kind of strange.
I understand. Yeah. I do not attempt to substitute my reasoning for that of the legislature.
Yeah, interesting.
Anybody else? Good? Okay. Thank you, Michael.
Okay. All right.
Appreciate it. All right, I'm gonna try to go through these as quick as I can. Rock Springs Ridge update. Well, Gary, I'm glad you came, so you got me updated. So we're, try to press forward, see where we get with that. Camp Weewa, just to let you know, after the vote tonight, Lowe's is trying to schedule something for the first 2 weeks of September to completely renovate Camp Weewa. And so I'll probably reaching out to both Wekiva and Apopka High School for kids who need their community service hours and, any community leaders and the Friends of Camp Weewa to come out and help. So as soon as they get to 3 days, they think they can do it in 3 days. They'll have north of 200 associates from Lowe's there to help us. So we're excited about them coming in and kind of interesting, we had a call that went to the Chamber of Commerce to Kate Manley and from Finfrock. They want to rent the Camp Weewa right out of the gate. So
Oh, I like camp.
yeah. So anyway, they're excited. 1,000. They'll have 1,000 people at
Yeah,
Camp Weewa.
Frank, yeah.
So anyway, next up, 9/11. Just kind of run down what we've got going on. I know Maynard has really worked hard. Jerry Maynard has really worked hard on this event. We start out registration 6 to 6:30 for a 5K race. And what's really going to be unique about this race is that every member of the first responders that we lost in the towers and across the country will have their name on a plaque. So as you run around the course, you'll be able to remember all the people that we lost during that tragic event. So I'm really excited about that. Let's see what else. The proceeds to benefit the Armando Borjas Scholarship Foundation. He was a firefighter, served for 14 years before dying at the age of 39 from esophageal cancer. The foundation helps send local youth to fire and EMT school. Then the service, the 9/11 Memorial Service, will start at 8:30. We've got a featured speaker from NYC Fire Department, trying to find somebody from the NYC PD as well, to be another kind of a side.
The only, is
keynote.
that gonna be at the amphitheater?
Correct.
So we're not gonna, because for a lot of people that don't know, I had been kind of, going back and forth with it. I did tell Jerry Maynard that I would support him, but I would like to have something at our 9/11 memorial. That has been my concern too.
Well,
Because
let's-
that's what we have.
we still got time. We can put
Right,
something
I like to
together.
just have,
Sure.
because not, in the past, I have seen the residents that do come out, they're kind of the older and the seniors, they're not really gonna be participating or supporting the 5K. I think that if we have a little something over at the 9/11 memorial here in front of City Hall, that we will give the residents that option. They can go and support the 5K run and be there, or they can come here as they normally do around 8 o'clock, and usually by 9 o'clock it's done. But I'd like to pay that respect to 9/11 and certainly have the opportunity to give some of our residents to come to this location.
Okay, thank you.
And I did tell Jerry that. I did say that we had time to do that. And I think I did mention that to you in the email that I sent. And I would appreciate a consideration for that. Thank you.
Okay, next up, we've got, that same evening, we've got the 9/11 Tribute to Heroes concert. It's being sponsored by CFL Hope. They're out of Claremont. They're going to donate, proceeds will go toward the Hope Center and the Armando Borjas Foundation. General admission, $25, $35 for covered seating, 20% discount for veterans and first responders. They'll have kids zone, food trucks, fire trucks, military vehicles. The featured musicians will be Low Cash, Donnie Lee, Randall Crawford, Adam Cunningham, Brandon Bing, and Country Airwaves. So a great evening as well. Okay, next up, the FLC proposed resolutions. You've seen that in your packet. Does anybody have any problems with any of those that the city is, Florida League of Cities has presented? If not, look for a motion to adopt those resolutions.
No. You
So
can do
moved.
it.
Got a motion by Commissioner Bankson,
Second.
second by Commissioner Smith. All those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries unanimously. So you've got your marching orders there, Commissioner Smith.
Got it.
Okay, Sheila Oaks update. We've got one inlet up and working. Should have most of the project done within the next 2 weeks. We also added the second pipe that will go from the last junction box down to the lake. AJ and I and the whole team thought, it couldn't hurt to have an additional pipe from that last junction box into the lake that's out of the, not underwater at that time. So making progress there. Just want to let everybody know, due to the increase in the Delta variant, we've closed all public access to City Hall, to all the fire departments, to the police department. Everything will be done remote, and to utility billing. So we're gonna revisit this on Friday, next Friday, not this week, a week from Friday. See where we're at, but we've had some uptick here in City Hall, and we want to make sure that we protect not only our citizens, but our employees here. The cases per 1,000 are up to, here in Orange County, up to 12.3% positivity rate, so something we definitely need to do. Speaking of that, we've got a DOH, the mobile vaccination unit will be at the Billy Dean Community Center next Friday, July 23rd, from 2:30 p.m. until 5 p.m. I want to say it's Pfizer. I'm almost sure it's not the one-shot J&J, but anyway, so that's Friday, July 23rd, from 2:30 p.m. until 5 p.m. So anybody that's looking for a vaccination, that would be your chance to get it. And last but not least, just want to tell you, we will be taking on water at Golden Gym as of tomorrow. Our 300 million gallon pond is up. Got it all tested, no leaks, no everything. So we will be taking water on tomorrow. And so we've got 300 million gallons more of storage that we can use for irrigation. So with that, close the public meeting.